It's a very special pep today. I'm not starting with Let's Get Peppy. We've got a little pre-getting peppy segment right now because we've got a little announcement that I've been teasing for the last 2 weeks right off the top before we even begin. We're in the twilight zone still, and it involves me introducing this fine, strapping fellow right here. His name is Lachlan Hodson. But because I have FM radio sensibilities, I am going to be calling him from now on Lachy the Lachy. And he is this podcast's first ever hire.
Hello. Pleasure to meet you, Peppers, and thank you for having me on board, Chaz. When you said FM sensibilities, I was worried that I'd be getting called Hod Dog, as I have been in a past life. So no, thank you. Pleasure to meet you, Lachy the Lachy, reporting for duty.
I'm glad you enjoy it. Why don't you tell the Peppers a bit about yourself? Because they may be communicating with you over the years.
It's a pleasure to meet you, dear Pepper. I am Lachlan. I've been a podcast producer for 4 years now. I get to say that I've been lucky enough to work with some of Chaz's former colleagues through The Chaser. I produce The Chaser Report for Dom Knight and Charles Firth. That's a daily news podcast. It's a little bit shorter than PEP here, only 20-minute episodes as opposed to what could be a 4-hour one today if we're lucky. I also, through the Chaser Report, have been able to work with yourself and Dr. David Smith and recent PEPcaster, Dr. Emma Shortis as well. So lots of fun there. I'm also a young person living in Sydney, so naturally I have about 3 jobs. I also work for Pedestrian TV as a news writer, but none of those views are going to be coming in. This is PEP. We're just here for the American politics. So thank you for having me on board. What is one of the most incredibly high audience engagement that I've ever seen in a podcast before. So pleasure to meet you, Correspondence.
We certainly like to talk to each other, us Peppers. I've told you guys a few times before that there would be a number of changes happening around here. Well, there've already been a few, as you're well aware of. Lachy is going to be in charge of making a heap more. But I want to take you through the first few changes. Not all of them, just the first few, because they're relevant to you guys now. Lachy's going to be monitoring our levels during the podcast, which is nice. It means hopefully the end of our audio peaking adventures, fingers crossed.
No promises.
Well, you're going to monitor them more than I do. I promise you that. He's also going to be doing the edits from now on. So what that means is I'm about to get 6 hours more sleep on Friday night. Woo! That's what that means.
Wait. So what's happened to my Friday nights?
I don't give a shit. It also means I might live past 50, which is lovely. No, look, it's great news for everyone except for Lachy and my haters. He's also going to be doing his edits off the ABC system. And if you know what that means no ABC system means no more 3-hour limit to the podcast. So who knows how long this one will be. I am not going to be doing 12-hour podcasts. No, I actually don't think the podcast is going to be much longer, maybe a little bit longer because I do edit them a little bit for time at the moment. But just with Lachy doing the editing, what might happen is we might slowly move towards doing more podcasts that are a little bit shorter, say 2-hour or 2.5-hour podcasts a week rather than 1 3-hour or 3+ hour podcast a week. So that might be happening. We'll see. We'll feel it out and we'll see how we massage it. Either way, there are no arbitrary technological limits being placed on us anymore, which is lovely.
Lachy's just physical ones like sleep.
Exactly. Well, that one I gave up a long time ago, so don't worry about that. Lachy's next job after that, you're going to like this one, is to get merch going. Yeah, that's right. We are hoping for you to be able to buy merch in next few weeks.
Yeah, we should be able to get it set up rather quickly through current means, yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Definitely before the election would be nice. So start saving your pennies. All proceeds are going to a very worthy cause, which is Lachy's salary.
Yeah. Which then in turn actually goes to another very worthy charity, which is Lachlan's landlord.
Yes, that's right. Lachy has 3 jobs and 0 houses. He lives in Sydney. yes. Oh, by the way, just so you know, I'm not like running him on tips or something. It's not like that. He's getting a base rate, but if we earn more than that base rate, it's all going to him. Anyway, finally, we are catapulting into the 1990s with our other change, and that is our own email address. I know. Exciting. What will they think of next? Email producer@pepthepodcast.com. Producer@pepthepodcast.com. If you want to send us any private feedback or suggestions or random thoughts or comments you don't want anyone else to know, but please, if you've got comments, still put them on the Facebook or YouTube, because I really love the community we're building there, and I love you guys commenting on each other's stuff. But if you don't want to share it with the public, sure, email us. Producer@pepthepodcast.com. Both Lachy and I are going to have access to that email address, so we'll both be able to see those emails. You'll see Lachy every now and then on the pod, but otherwise you'll probably only see Lachy when we have these family meetings where we discuss big changes. Do you have anything else to add, Lachy?
No, a good producer is seen, or neither seen nor heard. But I will quickly say, just on merch, I have been sort of brainstorming a few ideas. There's some basic ones that I think our listeners should be able to look forward to, like mugs or shirts. Yep. I particularly like the idea of I never raise the stakes on inconsequential views on a shirt, just because then it means that our guests don't have to say it. However, in terms of merch, there is one thing that I thought just is distinctly American and had to be done as soon as possible. And so I actually had a crack and I got one thing made up as a sort of welcome aboard gift for you, Chaz. Here you are. It is, for the listeners who aren't watching right now, I've just gifted Chaz his very own red Make America Great Again trucker hat. But you'll notice it doesn't say Make America Great Again, Chaz. It says something else.
It says Make Pep Great Again.
Whoa, which doesn't imply anything about the previous quality of Pep before.
I think it does. I think you're having a go.
I thought that was a fun start to our dive into merch. However, I did realize that it's actually a terrible gift for anyone, because I doubt any of our listeners would want to be seen dead wearing anything that looked even too close to one of those hats. So if you have any better ideas for merchandise, please reach out to producer@pepthepodcast.com and I will take all ideas on board.
Fantastic. Well, stay peppy, Lachy.
Stay peppy.
And on with the pod. Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 181. That's PEP or Planet Extra Podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, which you can see on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV and 8 p.m. on Fridays on ABC News, or anytime you like on iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America, or on YouTube on the ABC News In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening to us, you can also find PEP on YouTube and Facebook, where you'll also find timestamps and show notes in the blurb. And if you leave a comment under those videos, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us at PEPCHASDRDAV. That's at PepChazDrDave. If you want to contact me privately, you can email us. That address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. That's producer@pepthepodcast.com. Great work, Lachy. But for now, let's meet a guest who refuses point blank to raise the stakes on inconsequential views, and a guest who sometimes will. I'm not going to tell you which is which. You can decide for yourselves. They're Bill Wyman and Melina Wicks. Hello, folks.
Good afternoon, Chaz.
Now, first of all, just remind people who we are. Melina, you've made a fair few segs now for Planet America.
That's right.
So I guess you are now part of the Planet America team.
Yeah.
How's that working out for you?
I'm enjoying it. I hope the people who watch Planet America feel the same. But yeah, it's been really fun.
Works
it's
for me.
A good outlet for my enduring interest in this topic.
Excellent. How about you, Bill? What's going on in your world?
About the usual stuff. I'm not teaching this semester. I generally teach at the University of Sydney, but of course I write an occasional column on U.S. politics for the Sydney Morning Herald, and I write for a few places back in America. And for people who don't know, I worked at National Public Radio in Washington for a while, and I worked at a big internet magazine called Salon doing the same thing.
Excellent. For your information at home, we are recording this at 2:55 p.m. on Friday, the 27th of September. I reckon that we're going to get this out a lot earlier than tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. because we got a professional doing it this time. Thank you again, Lachy. So let's crack right onto this. Bill and Melina, let's start with you, Melina. What are you grateful for?
I am grateful for Curb Your Enthusiasm. We're going to talk about RFK later. Nothing to do with that.
Okay.
I don't mean it to be loaded in that manner. No, I just, the other day I was sick for a couple of days and it was kind of the level of sick where, I had a fever, I couldn't work, but I wasn't so sick that I was bedridden. And I'd been saving up the last season of Curb Your Enthusiasm until I knew I would have time to watch it. Because I have a kid that goes to bed late. I don't get a lot of time to watch TV at the moment. And I just thought, I don't want to start it and then not be able to finish it. And so I was sick for 2 days and I watched 9 out of the 10 episodes in the season. I've fallen short and now don't know when I'm going to get to actually finish it, the final episode. But I just love it so much. It's one of my all-time favorite shows. I am grateful that Larry David made it for so many years when obviously he doesn't need to work a day in his life because he's a wealthy man. And it's just still so good all the way to the final season. So I really enjoyed that.
Without notice, Bill, do you have a favorite show?
A favorite show of all time?
No, that you like to watch. It doesn't have to be the best ever.
Well, I generally say there's obviously great shows like I wrote a lot about television, right? So The Wire, I think, is an extraordinary show. Deadwood, both of those are dramas that I think are actually a lot better than Sopranos for various reasons. But I always give the edge, believe it or not, to Seinfeld because Seinfeld became this anti-human, misanthropic masterpiece of satire and modern humor in the context of a 22-minute American broadcast sitcom. And I think just for doing what it did in that context, it deserves the edge.
And while you're at it, what are you grateful for?
It's so funny. One of the things, speaking of American politics, I'm grateful for is this guy named Robert Caro, which I assume people know about. He's a famous American nonfiction writer, mostly famous for doing a book called The Power Broker, which was about a guy in New York City in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s who, through an extraordinary ability, just took control of a whole bunch of the infrastructure in New York City. He built bridges, tunnels, he built Shea Stadium, the United Nations, Lincoln Center, the New York World Fair, about 1,000 parks, about 1,000 miles of freeway and expressway, Jones Beach. Unbelievable story. It's all about power, the power broker. And of course, what he's known for now is his 5-volume history of Lyndon Johnson, which is an extraordinary work. I don't expect people in Australia to want to read that much about one guy. The 3rd volume, which I'm rereading today, is called Master of the Senate. And I really do recommend that because it's a history of the United States Senate, which is just so fascinating if you're interested in this sort of thing. And it's just such an extraordinary work. It's just so sweeping, and the meticulous understanding he gets of this is incredible. There's going to be 5 volumes. 4 have been published. I've read Master of the Senate a long time ago. It comes out like every 10 years. So I'm rereading that. Then I'm going to read the 4th one. And by that time, hopefully, he will not have passed away. And the 5th one will come out. And I also can recommend a documentary called Turn Every Page, which is about Caro and his editor, Robert Gottlieb, and about their extraordinary 50-year collaboration. And there's a lot, if you're really into fighting about semicolons, there's a lot, a surprising amount of time in these documentary devoted to talking about their arguments about semicolons.
Wow, what a tease.
I'm grateful for one other thing.
Yes.
I'm grateful for Melina's thing she's grateful for, because I wrote a big story for Slate magazine about 6 months ago talking about how bad the last season of Curb Your Enthusiasm was. So I'm looking forward, we can argue about it after.
Oh, it's on. It's on. Bill's always controversial. For what it's worth, I think my favorite show, at least of the last 20 years or so, is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I can watch that I can watch 20 episodes in a row.
Wow, yeah, people love that show.
I love it so much. And and I reckon my guiltiest pleasure, and this is a genuine guilty pleasure, but I say that because I feel embarrassed admitting this on air. But just, I'm going to be honest, my guilty pleasure, I can always put on an episode of ER. Always. Oh, yeah. Like it just delivers. Like it's not profound. It just delivers. They're good. Anyway, I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for summer music. That's what I'm grateful for. And what I'm referring to there is that this is the time of year where it gets a lot hotter fast. And quite frankly, I hate it. I hate the heat. I hate summer. But what I like is that for the last 20 years, I've had the same routine where where when it starts getting hot, I whip out my favorite summer song albums and I play them for the first time in a year on high rotation. I play them until I get sick of them and then I put them away and then I'll bring them back a year later. And in particular, I'm referring to Thirsty Merc's debut album, which I just love, and the Fratelli's Costello music, which I also just love. There's some ripping songs in both of them, including obviously, as soon as I say summer songs and Thirsty Merc, I know everyone is thinking of the Bondi Rescue song, which is in the summertime. And that is indeed, that is a great summer song. If you're Australian, when you're talking summer songs, that's the first thing people often think about. But that whole album has so many great songs. Wasting Time, My Completeness. There's like 8 bangers on that album. And then the Fratellis, it's not most people's definition of summer music, but for whatever reason, whatever Pavlovian reason, it's mine. For the Girl is an absolute classic example of that. I could just listen to that 10 times in a row. Whistle for the Choir, and of course, Chelsea Dagger. That's one of the few songs that has not been ruined by being on a Kmart ad. Every other song on the Kmart ad has been ruined for eternity afterwards, but Chelsea Dagger's just that good. Anyway, I'm super grateful to both those albums because they've helped me get through the first 2 days of summer, and I don't know what's going to get me through the next 100 days of summer, but I'll have to find something. But for now... Hey! Correspondence Central. Correspondence Central. Not really central. Just a little bit on the sides because it's going to be pretty quick. But yeah, you get the idea. Let's start with some Haitians correspondence. Hairy Numbnuts. Now, Hairy Numbnuts has had an absolute cracker. Like, honestly, I'm limiting these guys to 3 comments per pod. But I could have run 8. Like Hairy Numbnuts has had some great comments this week. And this is the first of them. He cautioned me on my stats usage. And that's a shame because I spent a long time on those stats. But he said, Springfield. Watch out for the stats, Chaz, on Springfield. Look at the map. Clark County, which Springfield is in, is tiny. 20 kilometres by 25 kilometres. Springfield's only 30 kilometres from the heart of Dayton. It's about the same from Columbus and less than that from the suburbs. A lot of people might be commuting. Dayton's vacancy rate is almost 10% and its median rent is pretty low, though Columbus is higher. Springfield is a pretty small place. It's logical that a lot of the workers, maybe most of them, wouldn't live in Springfield. A lot of the industrial parks are well outside town anyway. Heck, even the Chuck E. Cheese is almost closer to Dayton than Springfield. So what he's saying there is that a lot of the stats I ran through, which were either Springfield stats or Clark County stats, might have a huge asterisk next to them, which is a shame because I bored you for 30 minutes with those stats.
But Jess, I will say, because that's another thing that bugged me about a lot of the commentary is that in American towns, you have that little town, I think, 60,000 people.
Yeah.
But the Springfield, quote unquote, metropolitan area, I think is 120, 130,000.
Yeah.
That's one thing I noticed early. And so I've been watching the shows, whether people are being intellectually honest enough to know, because there's no distinction between the town of Springfield and the surrounding little towns. Of course.
Well, I made a distinction between the town and the metropolitan area, but I didn't think about outside Clark County. And Harry Numbnuts makes the point I probably should have. Anyway, but I will say this. If there are 10,000 Haitians, as I posit, working in the Springfield area, and then there's 10 other thousand working in the area but not living in Clark County, then doesn't that invalidate all the complaints about them putting pressure on the city resources? Because they're not using the infrastructure as much because they don't live in the city. So I think the stats may apply anyway, even though they may be wrong. Grant had an interesting point about, like I made the point about Haitians living in Florida. He said there's actually 500,000 Haitian American migrants in Florida. 73% of them turn out to vote. Predominantly Democratic voters. Democrats might use them to flip Florida with their vote, which is an interesting. That's a pretty big group of people. So it's
with a very high voting percentage.
Yeah,
too.
That's right. So
probably higher than Cubans.
So that's an interesting one from Grant.
Is that already baked in though? If they already turn out at very high levels?
Well, yeah, I guess you make a good point.
They didn't win Florida last time.
Well, that's true. Pretty far from it. That is true. But yeah, like it's It's maybe they'll be into voter fraud this time. Maybe it'll be 150% turnout. I'm sure Trump will say it is if he loses Florida. Mobile phones correspondence from Who PhD. That's Doctor Who for those who don't speak Whoish. The PRC, China that is, limits lifetime allocation of SIM cards to 5 per person. Who PhD is referring to my stats nugget about the fact that there were 292, I believe, mobile phone subscriptions for every 100 people in Hong Kong. And Who PhD says he's talking about numbers. He's talking about numbers there, not physical SIMs, but nevertheless, any Chinese national will be very reluctant to lend their SIM card to a tourist. The limit is obviously to align with enforcement of domestic online social networks where anonymity and pseudonymity is banned, but also modern life can't function without them. So regardless, the upper limit of the answer is 500, which is interesting. Harry Numbnuts has a more interesting angle. I love this. Hong Kongers, HKers, I don't know, live on their mobile phones. Most also get their home internet on 4G and have subscriptions for their iPad or laptop as well. I'm guessing you haven't been there lately, Chaz. Google an image search for why do Hong Kong taxi drivers have so many mobile phones? Get ready to be amazed. I Googled it. Wow. I was amazed. Let me show you what I found. I found this taxi.
That doesn't look safe.
And it's not new. This is a taxi from 11 years ago. Before the smartphones came out.
Wow.
So they love their phones in Hong Kong. That is clearly the case. So that is some that's golden correspondence there. Thank you very much, Harry Numbnuts again. Some abortion correspondence from Flick Hopkinson. Oh, Flick, sorry, I did the last name. Look, I was, in the last podcast, I was calling for more specific laws. I was saying the problem is these laws aren't specific enough, aren't careful enough, and it puts the doctors in an unenviable situation because the laws are too ambiguous, and it's the fear that gets you. It's the fear when the cover your ass lawyer comes and says, well, I can't guarantee you're not going to jail. That's what gets you. That's what I said. Flick disagrees. Flick said, the problem is the more specific a law gets around something as varied and nuanced as medical treatment, the more likely you are to have things fall outside the specifics or need lawyers to pass, does this count? Medicine isn't specific, and there are any number of slightly different situations that doctors may find themselves in. Legislators are not usually the kind to properly understand these nuances. That's why people who understand medical treatment and respect women's rights tend to promote laws that put the decisions into the doctor's hands, not the lawyer's hands. E.g., the laws post-viability that just say that 2 doctors must agree. Conservatives paint this as liberals wanting abortions up to birth. But the point is that any legal restriction, especially one with punitive responses, takes decisions away from the experts, the doctors, who are dealing with all the nuances of the case before them, not just the hypotheticals that come up in legislatures. And Josh replied to that with a very simple way of putting it. If you want lawyers making decisions, have strict laws. If you want doctors making calls, the laws need to make it clear that they're the final arbiter. Medical malpractice laws exist to counter doctors who are operating in bad faith. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Great point.
You like that point? Yeah.
The only thing I think is that I think what we're talking about here, it's a feature, not a bug. Yes. That it's deliberately written in an ambiguous way to scare people as much as possible and create this sort of. I don't think that the people creating those laws in Florida were sitting around saying, oh, how can we make this okay? They're doing whatever they can to make it as punitive and difficult as possible for both doctors and patients, right?
Yeah, well, it has a double benefit, right? Because it encourages doctors to err on the side of not giving abortions while giving the politicians plausible deniability that they're going as hard as they actually are in practice. Say, oh, well, we didn't want that to happen. We're saying, reasonable restrictions.
Yeah.
And one other thing to remember is that the American medical system is so screwed up that you have these traditional nonprofit hospitals, and now you have a lot of increasingly for-profit hospitals. So, and nonprofits are scared enough. They're like a media company, when it comes to law things. And now the for-profit ones are just completely ruthless when it comes to legal things like this. They'd have there's no percentage in it for them at all. And under law, they're supposed to be running the business in the way that maximizes return for shareholders. So they, with a quote-unquote clear conscience, they can say, hey, if there's any potential detriment cost us at all, let's nix it. So it's really bad.
I was just going to say, like, I generally am nervous about imputing intention when I'm not sure, but it's hard to argue with the results at the very least, I would say. Bill, why don't we get into? Actually, no. Before Bill, there's an update. This is not correspondence. It's a correspondence from me. Okay, I'm writing to myself, and in the abortion section last week as well, we referred to John McEntee, who put up an Instagram post. That was a TikTok post. He's one of Trump's most trusted workers and also his senior advisor for Project 2025. He also co-founded a conservative dating app, The Right Stuff, and he put up this TikTok post about abortion.
Can someone track down the women Kamala Harris says are bleeding out in parking lots because Roe v. Wade was overturned? Don't hold your breath.
So that was lovely, and that became a lightning rod. That TikTok post, one woman. Well, we played one response last week, and it wasn't just one. There were many responses, just slapping him down, going, "Hello, I'm one of those women. I'm one of those women. I'm also one of those women," etc. Anyway, but one of those women who wasn't bleeding out, Grace Carter, saw that post and she was furious. For reasons other than you might think. She was furious because she said, I know that guy. He reached out to me through Instagram in October last year when I was an 18-year-old, and he asked if I wanted some free merchandise for The Right Stuff, that dating site he runs. And he passed on my phone number if I wanted some of that merch. And I don't know if she went through with it or not, but she seemed to have just drifted away. But then she saw that video and she was reminded of that. And so she then, because she didn't know who he was until that moment. And so then she went on Instagram and she said to people, I can't believe that guy did this to me. And all of a sudden she got a lot of responses from other people saying, it's funny you mentioned that. It turns out that Johnny McEntee has had quite a few experiences trying to chat up young women, trying to offer them merchandise and trying to offer them little favours and his phone number. Wired magazine spoke to a few of those women. One of them said that McEntee was soon sending her texts mentioning explicit sexual acts that made her quite uncomfortable and encouraged her to come to California. Quote, it was very sexual from day one. He kept making comments about my age and how hot it would be to sleep with someone who was my age. So it seems that Johnny McEntee might have a bit of a track record trying to pick up young women through his dating app, and it's all exposed from that one rather unfortunate post of his. So there's a bit of a moral to that story. Don't post smug. At least not if you're a borderline pedophile.
I can't believe he thought he was going to woo anyone with merch from his right-wing dating site.
If I hadn't just introduced people to Lachy and promised merch coming up soon, I would have been on board with you, Melina. But I'm starting to see Johnny's point all of a sudden. So we've got some great merch coming up, guys. You just wait. Don't listen to her. Don't listen to her.
Not all merch is created equal.
Now let's get to the content, Bill. You wanted to talk about Mark Robinson. We've talked about Robinson. We've talked about him endlessly, but I know you just want to make a quick point.
Just the one point that there's been reams of coverage on Mark Robinson. You guys talked about it last week because he apparently had this history of talking on a porn site, blah, 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 and long he has other things.
Had great merch, by the way, Nude Africa. There we go on.
So I could not find a single article that said, hey, 3 weeks ago, there was a whole other scandal with him about these people at a video porn parlor saying that he used to come in there a lot, sometimes 5 nights a week, sometimes bringing in a pizza with him.
Mark Robinson. I hope he was going to eat that pizza.
And both of these, there are so many jokes about Mark Robinson and his pizzas, let me tell you about it. Okay. So, but And like these comments, they all happened, I think, at least 10 years ago, or at least 7 to 10 years ago, or something like that. So it did happen in the past. But it's just amazing to me from the media perspective that, and something that happens with Trump a lot, that there are so many scandals and so many outrageous things that, you know, we've had some debates. And like in the second debate, I think he got questioned about January 6th. But of course, there's about a dozen of absolutely heinous things that Donald Trump has done that don't even get questioned. And for any other politician, that would be something that would completely drown their campaigns to a halt. And it's just really funny. It's a way that the media hasn't gotten adjusted to all of this, that there needs to be some of these places they look at. That is a huge story that people said he used to come to this porn parlor and eat pizza, and it goes along with this, but it just gets forgotten. And so many of the time, you've heard me probably natter on about this before, that some of these big scandals, particularly with celebrities and things like this, it just turns into, legal trouble. That, R. Kelly had some legal trouble, Roman Polanski had some legal trouble. Yeah. And it's kind of done with a wink and a smile, like you guys know what it is, but actually a lot of people don't. And it really serves those people, and it allows us to get inured to it. And it is pretty remarkable that scandal, the previous Mark Robinson scandal, which is one of the outrageous things we've ever heard, actually just disappears.
Well, to be fair to Mark Robinson, unlike Trump, he had the decency to not have both scandals at exactly the same time. Like the first scandal, the porn store scandal, that's like a month ago.
Yeah.
Like in North Carolina, that was a much bigger story than it was nationally.
Yeah.
So so he did have the decency to spread them out a little bit. Although I do find it interesting that maybe this was the real Pizzagate, the Mark Robinson version. While we're talking about Robinson versus Trump, though, I actually wanted to do my own little media thing as well, which is very quick. I object to the way the media has acted like Donald Trump created Mark Robinson. Like they're acting like Mark Robinson is Donald Trump's protege, and Donald Trump is the reason he's there, and it's just not true. So let me just go over, and it's an important reason why I'm backing over this. Like Dr. Dave told you last week, Robinson was first noticed because of a speech he made to the Greensboro City Council back in 2018, mostly about gun rights. There was a Republican councillor there, not named Donald Trump, named Mark Walker, who shared that video on Facebook, and it went viral, got millions of views. Within a week, Robinson's been interviewed by Fox and Friends, right? And Ainsley Earhart explicitly in that first interview asked him, when you're going to run for office? Like right away, as soon as it became viral starts, when you're going to run for office? Just like they were with Joe the Plumber 15 years ago. When you're going to run for office? They love doing that. The NRA put him in an ad. They made a star out of him. The NRA took him on the circuit, on the wingnut circuit. He did the tour and he got paid lots of money. He quit his job because he could afford to support himself just off being on the gun rights tour, just going from conference to conference, just doing his thing, so delivering his little speech again and getting applause. Trump completely ignored him during that entire period. Trump said nothing about him during that period. Robinson, then he ran for lieutenant governor, won in 2020 with zero help or interest or endorsement from Trump. Trump didn't say a thing about him in 2020 when he ran for lieutenant governor. The reason he won, the primary at least, was because he was more famous than the other guys, because the other guys were complete nobodies, whereas Mark Robinson was the dude from the NRA video. And so that's how he won the primary. And then in the general election, he ran as a generic Republican. And it's hard to believe that Mark Robinson could run as a generic Republican, but he didn't do any bomb throwing. He just kept his head down. Lieutenant governor, who gives a shit? No one knows who the lieutenant governor is. And so he won just as a Republican, as a bland, vanilla Republican. Then when he became lieutenant governor, his past social media posts caught up with him at that point in time. And there were two ways he could go, and he chose to lean into it and become a huge cultural lightning rod. And that at that point in time, he became the overwhelming favorite to be the Republican nominee for governor. And that was when Trump took an interest in him. Like always, Trump jumps on board when someone's already going to win. He likes to claim credit for winners. And that's what he did then. Why am I bringing this up? The reason I'm bringing this up is because Mark Robinson is not an example of the Trump GOP. Mark Robinson is the example of the post-Trump GOP. For those who look at the GOP and go, as soon as Trump's gone, well, then cool heads prevail. Mark Robinson is what you get when there is no Trump. That's what you get. If the crazies want crazy, they will get crazy. And when I'm saying the crazies, I'm not saying all Republicans. I'm saying a large proportion of the primary field in red states. Like if the primary voters, like that the small unit of a small unit of a small unit, the guys who turn up, if those guys want crazy, you're going to get crazy. You don't need Trump for crazy. There's plenty of it out there. So that's why I bring that up. It's just complete media malpractice, I think, to try and tie the two together when they're just not connected in the slightest, except for them both being highly entertaining.
Yeah.
I interrupted. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
I don't know. I just had that little media point.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, well...
I would just say the one thing that I find fun about the whole Mark Robinson scandal is that we're about to find what percentage of North Carolinians find literally nothing disqualifying to vote for governor. Because if being a Nazi peeping Tom isn't disqualifying for, let's say, 40% of people or whatever it ends up, 50%, whatever it ends up being, I don't think we're going to find anything that is.
Well, the answer to the first poll, at least, is all of them, because Mark Robinson didn't drop 1 point in the first poll after the scandal. But yeah, there'll be a lot more. Bill, I interrupted you. You were about to move on to the next little quick topic you wanted to rush past, which was Eric Adams.
Oh, I just fear we should mention Eric Adams.
Mention him
because it's a huge thing. I don't know if people have heard about what happened. He's the mayor of New York City, which is of course a very, very, very prestigious political position, and there's been this. It's funny because I don't really pay attention to New York politics, of course, but there's been this drumbeat of that you hear about these kind of corruption things. This is kind of the inverse of North Carolina, where New York, of course, is a very overwhelmingly Democratic town. So whoever wins the Democratic primary tends to win the mayorship. And it was one, I believe he won the primary by just a sliver of a percentage point against a woman, a much more quote unquote normal politician in New York City. And he was a longtime former cop, I believe in Brooklyn. And then he came up as a Brooklyn state senator or something like this and then ran for mayor, narrowly won the Democratic primary and then leapt into the chair 2.5 years ago. But just so people know that what has been happening in New York is one of the most amazing things we've ever seen in the history of American political corruption. Okay?
Wow, that's pretty big call.
Okay, seriously. Okay, so let me just tell you what's been going on. Yeah. What happened is you started hearing about this. There was all these complaints and news reports, but then the Fed started getting their little fingers into it, okay? So here's some of the things that happened. First of all, they raided his chief fundraiser. Yeah. And when we say raid, it means knock, knock, knock. The police come in. We're going to search your house. We're going to take all your phones and computers and laptops, okay?
It's a good thing you're not in Hong Kong.
Then...
That'd be a van.
Then they did the same thing to one of his aides. Yeah. Then they did it to one of his transition team members. And then he was driving in New York City. The car pulled over. The FBI said to a security detail, please step out of the mayor's car, and said to the mayor, give us all your phones. Okay, imagine what you have to do to be the mayor of New York City and have the FBI stop your car, politely ask your security detail to step aside and take all your phones.
What's the answer? What do you have to do?
Okay. I'm just getting started. Then they raided the home of his Asian affairs advisor. Then they took the phones of the police commissioner of New York City. Okay. I think there's 30,000 police officers in New York City, which is more police officers, I looked up, than New South Wales and Victoria combined.
Makes sense.
He's running one of the largest military forces in the world, and the FBI takes his phones away. Yeah. And this is not normal, right? Then... they took the phones of the deputy mayor, the school's chancellor, okay, the guy running the largest school district in the nation. Yeah. They took all his phones away right at his house, another deputy mayor, and another advisor. I'm not bothering to get into all the details. Yeah. Then they went after another guy who was the brother of the school's chancellor and another guy, and also a brother of a deputy mayor. So he has these two brothers plus his third brother. They're all involved in something. So the FBI goes after that way. Then the police commissioner resigned. Then the chief counsel resigned. Then 2 fire chiefs in Brooklyn were arrested. And then they raided the home of the new police commissioner.
The one who took over after the last one.
And apparently that has something not to do with the rest of this. This has something else to do.
How long was he police commissioner for?
Not very long. And now you have them delivering this. The indictment got leaked, I guess, the other night, and then they released it this morning.
See, this is why I don't know it. I
There's
can't
all
wait to
sorts
look.
of really juicy things, and basically, I'm outside. There's probably a whole bunch of other stuff, but the main thing has been getting all these money from foreign governments and sort of greasing their wheels in various ways around the city and be getting all this stuff. That's the one thing I just wanted to tell everyone about that was so great. So a lot of this is Turkey, because Turkey has an embassy in New York City or something like this and all this other stuff, and he was greasing the wheels for all that. And so he was getting all this stuff from Turkey, and one thing he used to get is a lot of flights on Turkish Airlines, okay? And I guess there's all these great emails where his girlfriend would say, oh, I really want to go to the Galapagos Islands. And he'd say, well, call Turkish Airlines and see if they fly there, okay? And then another time she texts him and says, wait, you're coming home from France? Why are you in Istanbul? He goes, oh, every flight goes through Istanbul.
Every one of his flights goes through Istanbul.
Okay. And now here's a transcript the FBI released.
Yeah.
His staffer says, how much does he owe? Please tell me and I'll make the payment. Airline manager, it's very expensive because it's last minute. I'm working on a discount. Adam staffer, okay. Airline manager, I'm going to charge $50. Adam staffer, no. Airline manager, that wouldn't work, would it? Adam staffer, no, dear. $50, what? Quote a proper price. Airline manager, how much should I charge? Smiley face. Adam staffer, his every step is being watched right now. 1,000 or so. Let it be somewhat real. We don't want them to say he's flying for free. Okay, and then it just goes on and on like that. There's a whole other set where the guy says,
begging to pay more for air flights. Yeah.
And there's a whole other thing like that, and it ends with them saying, it's okay, we're going to change all the names. His name won't be attached to it. So It's pretty bad. So this is just one of the greatest municipal police scandal or political scandals in American history, and that's saying something. So It's going to be a lot of fun.
So
it's not very subtle if you're on the take from the Turkish government and you're taking like a ton of flights on Turkish Air.
Yeah,
he's a very, very strange guy. It's kind of funny. It's like there seems to be a couple of screws loose, frankly, and it's thought that he's probably going to be forced to resign. And if that happens, there's going to be one of the biggest free-for-alls ever, and you might even have Andrew Cuomo jumping into the race, which is going to be a blast. And then this gets really in the weeds, but apparently the New York governor has the power to fire the New York mayor. That hasn't been tried in about 75 years, so that might happen too.
That's a great teaser for next week, which I suspect we'll be talking more about this story. As I say, I don't know much about this because this happened since I stopped reading. All I would say from this is just the opportunities are endless for the New York, for the FBI to make some money. I know that the Republicans are talking about defunding the FBI to a certain extent, but if they just open up a Crazy John's with all the mobile phones they've got, they could make a lot of money. They could make a huge money.
I think they have to give the phones back. Actually, they just make a copy of them and they give them back to you.
Yeah, we'll see.
One other thing. Yeah. So they also went to his house. They also searched his house the other day when they released the indictment. Yeah. So they took all his work phones, and then he said something like, oh, I don't know where my personal phone is, but I'll get it for you because I really want to cooperate with you. I really, really want to cooperate. Okay. And they said, okay. So a couple days later, he goes, here's the phone. I got good news and bad news. The good news is I have my personal phone that I promised because I'm cooperating, as you can see, I'm giving you my phone. The bad news is that I was so concerned about it the other day, like after you came and I couldn't find it, but then I found it. And I was really worried about the security of it, right? So I had this 4-digit passcode on it, but I was really concerned about security. So what I did is I changed it to a 6-character passcode so it would be safe when I gave it to you guys, but I can't remember what the new passcode is. That's literally in the FBI indictment, too. This guy was a police officer for 20 years.
Okay, this is a great story. You're right, Bill.
Thank you.
Melina, rather than worrying about the stories of the future, let's worry about the story of right now, which is Kamala Harris and the filibuster.
Sure. So
great story.
Kamala Harris did an interview in the past week where she said that if she wins the presidency, she is going to scrap the filibuster to codify abortion rights.
That being said, I've been very clear. I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe, and we need and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do.
So she technically already said in 2022 that she'd get rid of the filibuster for abortion rights. But given Harris's clean slate election campaign, where we basically assume that none of her past positions are her current positions unless she explicitly tells us so, we could not take that for granted, and therefore this is news. She's come out and said this. Strategically, I think it's fair to say this is all about trying to keep abortion front and center in the campaign. You've said many times already, that is her issue. Every time she can, she's trying to make the election campaign about this issue. Trump, same deal with immigration. And so I think coming out and saying this now is just a way to get the news cycle talking about abortion again, because she thinks every time she's doing that, she's winning. Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema are really mad.
I'm not surprised.
Joe Manchin has said he will not endorse her. She's lost the all-important Joe Manchin endorsement. Wow. A guy who most Democrats hate from a state she's never going to win.
And a guy who lives in West Virginia.
Yeah. And I kind of think if center-right people aren't swayed by Dick Cheney endorsing her, they're probably not going to care what Manchin thinks.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, Manchin said, shame on her. She knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy.
The holy grail?
It's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together. If she gets rid of that, then this would be the House on steroids. The filibuster stabilizes our democracy, promotes bipartisan cooperation, and protects our nation from partisan whiplash and dysfunction.
Okay.
I mean, I would say there's a fair amount of partisan dysfunction in Congress already. So I'm not necessarily buying the argument. I mean, I think you could equally make the argument that the filibuster discourages bipartisanship because it means that you can be in the minority and you can just tank the majority's legislative agenda in any given session without having the numbers. So it kind of encourages you to play spoiler more than anything.
And could I also ask if indeed the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy, how does every other country survive without the filibuster? And how, in fact, did America survive without the filibuster until it was used routinely in the civil rights era?
Well, and all 50 state governments within America are also somehow surviving without the filibuster.
Without the holy grail.
So I wouldn't say it's the best argument from Joe Manchin.
Sure.
Kirsten Sinema's complaint made a little bit more sense, I think. She said on Twitter, X, to state the supremely obvious, eliminating the filibuster to codify Roe v. Wade also enables a future Congress to ban all abortion nationwide. What an absolutely terrible, short-sighted idea, she says. That's a reasonable position. That's what a lot of people say when they push back against the idea of eliminating the filibuster, that it might be good for you when you're in power and means you can do more, but what about when you're not in power and it means your enemies can also do more?
Yeah.
I think that kind of comes down to a philosophical position of how you think government should function. I feel like you can basically either have a situation where everything is geared towards trying to prevent anyone from doing anything, or where you're letting people who win a majority in a democracy try as much as possible to enact their agenda, regardless of who is in power. And just looking at that isolated principle rather than thinking about who's wielding power on any given occasion, I am in favor of things happening as opposed to nothing happening. And I think it's important because I think the more that you see nothing happening and gridlock in Congress, the more people become disillusioned with government in general and the ability for government to do anything for anybody. And so, I mean, if Republicans win the Senate and want to try and have a nationwide abortion ban, they should be able to do that. And then people can have their feelings about that and they can express that feeling at the ballot box. Admittedly, with the Senate, there is an issue in the sense that it is a minoritarian institution. So Republicans can gain control without a majority support of the population. But it's still the system. And as you say, there is nothing inherently, people talk a lot about norm busting. There's nothing inherently normal about the filibuster. It is not in the Constitution. It hasn't been around through all of America's history. It hasn't been used in this way to disrupt and make it impossible to pass anything until relatively recently. And there's a pretty good argument that it came about this way by accident. It was never meant to be used in this way until it became a loophole to sabotage the majority's agenda, which, again, I would not call bipartisanship and I would not call functioning government. So, I sort of weigh pretty heavily on the side of get rid of it. I think it's quite illogical to get rid of it solely for abortion. And this is kind of what is happening, that, people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, don't want to eliminate the filibuster entirely. They keep coming with carve-outs. So, it's carve-outs for financial bills, and then it's carve-outs for judges, federal judges. And then that was the Democrats that did that. And then the Republicans come in and have a carve-out for Supreme Court justices, which arguably is the most important thing the Senate does these days anyway, in terms of impact, which is not subject to a filibuster. So now Harris is saying she wants to specifically have a carve-out for abortion, which I frankly think is pretty stupid. We're just going to not have the rule for this one policy area. Just get rid of it.
Seems quite arbitrary.
It's very arbitrary. So,
Yes.
I mean, I'm generally just of the view that they should not have this for anything, but that's clearly a bridge too far for some.
Look, I agree with you with all the arguments you've just made, but can I just put for argument's sake to you one person who disagrees with you, and that's Kamala Harris from 2017.
I'm shocked.
Now, because let me read you the petition that she signed in 2017 when Trump was in charge and the Republicans held all three branches of the federal government. Regardless of our past disagreements on that issue, we are united in our determination to preserve the ability of members to engage in extended debate when bills are on the Senate floor. We are mindful of the unique role the Senate plays in the legislative process, and we're steadfastly committed to ensuring this great American institution continues to serve as the world's greatest deliberative body. Therefore, we're asking you to join us in opposing any effort to curtail the existing rights and prerogatives of senators to engage in full, robust and extended debate as we consider legislation before this body in the future. So Kamala Harris signed that, so obviously she disagrees with you.
Well, and given Republicans are almost certainly going to win the Senate in this election cycle, she's probably going to agree with her old self again pretty soon when Democrats are likely in the minority in the next Senate. But I think they should get rid of it.
What do you think, Bill?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's particularly after having just been reading this Master of the Senate book, which is the whole detailed, incredibly granular history of how it evolved and all that stuff. Of course, we support the filibuster. If one person stands there and has to not go to the bathroom and has to eat on the floor and keep talking, that's a great kind of filibuster. All the other stuff, I totally agree. I mean, I do understand the point that the Senate is supposed to be, there's some famous line about it's the tea you put in your saucer and you let it cool or whatever. On the other hand, as Chaz says, it has almost exclusively been used by atavistic, backward, hateful forces in America based in the South. And just on that principle, I agree, it should be run over. One side thing I want to say about Kamala Harris, I can't remember a political campaign that is so little based on policy. I start reading these stories like, what's Kamala Harris's economic policy going to be and stuff like that. I can't even think of anything that's going to change anyone's minds when it comes to this stuff. They're both just going to keep bashing on these issues that they obviously have a base to motivate their base. And my critique of her is something that coming off of a column I wrote in the City Morning Herald the other day, that I still think the Democrats don't speak the language of normal people. I really honestly don't. And nobody in America cares about the filibuster. I can't even imagine one person in 100 being able to tell you what exactly the issue is. One person in 1,000, honestly. And I was on the ABC actually after the last debate, and I was pretty lukewarm about it. I thought, well, he was deranged and she was good, but I didn't think she talked to people. And then, of course, everyone said, oh, my God, it was such a wipeout. She won, and it's going to change the election. And actually, it hasn't changed much since then. And so I still stand by it that I still don't think that she's communicating with people in a way that language they understand. Nobody cares about the filibuster. She should be talking about the minimum wage, more working, not just saying she's into working class people, but talking the way working class people talk.
Well, just to, not that Bill was attacking you at all, but just to back up Melina, the point that she was making before is not that Kamala Harris wants to talk about the filibuster, but Kamala Harris wants to talk about abortion in any way she possibly can.
Right. No, and that's why I'm agreeing. That's what she's doing. Yeah. So it's not actually about the filibuster. It's just a way to talk about abortion.
Yeah. I agree with you though about the debate, because we had the debate about the debate after it happened, where the one line, especially in the debate, that I was kind of surprised. I'm like, why is no one ever saying this? Which is just pointing to Trump and saying, just remember you voted this guy out for a reason.
Yeah.
Because I think a big thing in Trump's favor at the moment is that, time has passed since he was president. And so you get the nostalgia factor. People kind of forget what they didn't like about him. They remember what he did like about him. It's that sort of grass is greener. They are more conscious of what they don't like about the government now versus then. And so people who maybe voted for Trump and then voted for Biden are feeling a bit more nostalgic about, maybe things were better under Trump. And I just think reminding people, not even the reasons, but just flat out saying, just remember you voted him out for a reason, seems like an obvious point to me, because then you're putting it in people's own hands. You're not telling people what to think. You're saying, remember what you think. Remember what you thought last time. Think about that next time you go to vote and his name is on the ballot too. But they don't seem to want to make that case.
That's such a great point. It's such a great point. Do you want a stats nugget?
Yeah, go. Sure.
Stats nugget.
Go for it, Phil.
Okay, here's the stats nugget. It's a factoid, actually.
Yeah.
Do you know that Joe Biden got a larger percentage of the vote against Donald Trump than Ronald Reagan did against Jimmy Carter?
I did not know that.
Joe Biden, that the American people gave a percentage, not votes, percentage,
Yeah,
a
yeah.
larger percentage of the American people voted in Joe Biden to throw out the sitting president, Donald Trump, than voted for Ronald Reagan to throw out the sitting president, Jimmy Carter. And the difference is something like 51.5 versus 51 or something like that.
That is.
I mean, can you imagine if Jake Tapper had said that to Donald Trump? Mr. Trump, more people, a larger percentage of American people voted you out in favor of Joe Biden in front of you than Ronald Reagan did Jimmy Carter. How can you say the election was stolen? And that would just blow nobody would ever forget that, because Donald Trump always gets to say, more people voted for me than blah, 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 blah. And I mean, he was resoundingly thrown out, to your point.
On this note, I actually have a question for you about the filibuster. We'll come back to that. But just, look, I wasn't going to go here, but I don't want to repeat what I said on Planet America, because I imagine many of the people watching and listening to this watched Planet America. So I'm not going to bore you by repeating myself. What I will do is put in the homework the article I referred to in Planet America, and I'll just remind you guys what it is and just explain for Bill and Melina, who have no idea because it hasn't been to air yet. But I was making the point, and I've said this a number of times on the pod, but I haven't had the numbers to back it up, that in my view, the fundamentals of this election favor Trump. And that the story of this election is there's some burst of something happening that favors the Democrats, and the polls go up for the Democrats, and then there's a gradual drift towards Trump over time. And then something else happens, and there's another burst, and then a gradual drift towards Trump, and so on. It's like the whole election is slanted towards the Republicans, and that Kamala Harris keeps on needing to have to do things in order to keep even or keep ahead, because as time drifts, so does the vote gradually towards Trump. And I've always had that feeling for the last probably 6 months, and I haven't been able to quantify it, why that is. But Gallup put out an analysis last week where they went through their version of Alan Lichtman, essentially. They went through their fundamental measurements that over time have shown who wins elections. Every single one of them favors the Republicans. The two that had the strongest relationship to presidential outcome was party identification and leaning, and Republicans are leading that for the first time since they started measuring that in 1992. And party better able to handle the most important problem. So when you ask people, what's the most important problem? Whatever they say, it doesn't matter. They say, what's the party that's best able to handle that? Republicans are ahead 46-41 on that one. The people who win that measure have won every single election since 1948.
Wow.
Yeah, and the Republicans are 5 points ahead. And then there's a whole bunch more. There's the ones which have moderate relationship to past presidential outcomes is satisfaction with how the way America is going, and the the Democrats at the moment, people are 22% satisfied with the direction of the country, and no one since they started measuring that, which was I think in 1980 maybe, has won an election with less than 33% satisfaction. That was Obama in 2012 who won that, and the Democrats are at 22% at the moment. Economic confidence minus 28%. No one has won an election since they started measuring that in the 80s with less than minus 1%. That was Obama 2012 again. And the Democrats are coming minus 28. Party better able to keep America prosperous. Republicans ahead by 6. It's a similar kind of situation. I don't remember off the top of my head the numbers on that, the historical numbers. Presidential job approval, I don't need to tell you about that. We all know it's shit. 39%, way below anyone who's ever won. In fact, I think it might be way below anyone full stop. 39% is pretty low. Party favorable ratings, Republicans are ahead by 1 point. That's the only one where they break even. Other than that, every other measure I just told you, the Republicans are way ahead. And yet, the polls suggest that Democrats are leading, but that's the reason I feel if they do nothing, if it just keeps on breaking even, Republicans win. Like Harris needs to keep on having victories. She needs to keep on creating a situation where the news is that Trump is bad and she is good. And there needs to be something that cuts through. Because if nothing cuts through, it just trends towards Republicans slowly over time. That's what I feel. And this Gallup analysis, I think, backs that up. Anyway, so I wasn't going to bring this up because I talked about it on Planet America. But if you're interested in that article, I'll put it in the homework and you can have a look in detail.
That's really interesting. And I kind of, going off the back of your rigorous evidence, I just have this vague gut feeling that I'll mention. That I've just been thinking, I just keep thinking about it lately, of just a theory of the kind of Trump-Biden voter and who that kind of person might be and how they might be thinking. And again, this is based on absolutely nothing, so take it with a grain of salt. But I have a sense that there's maybe a certain portion of the electorate that, in 2020 were not happy with Trump, not happy with the way things were going. Republicans who, did not see this person as, truly of the party, and presented with Joe Biden as an alternative who was a very known quantity, who'd been there forever, maybe just voted for him thinking, I just want the Trump era to be over and things to go back to normal. So
I just want to turn the page.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Joe Biden just to get Trump out of there. And that now it's 4 years later and Trump's still there. And I think a lot of them are maybe in the situation where it's like, they're faced now with, okay, Trump is still around. Do I vote for Kamala Harris? And they're Republicans. They're not Democrats. And I feel like there's a little bit of a, if you can't beat them, join them thing where it's like, okay, it didn't work to vote for a Democrat. So at this point, am I going to just hold my nose and vote for Trump now and just be a Republican and this is what being a Republican is? Or am I going to be a Democrat now? Because if you're voting for Biden and then Harris, who's, I think much associated much more, or considered less of a moderate the way Joe Biden was, at what point do you just become a Democratic voter? Yeah. And I think that is a significantly additional ask for that kind of people. And you can see Harris is working so hard to try and win Republican voters over. I just feel like every time I hear her messaging on something or doing a certain event, it seems geared to Republicans above her own base, except for the abortion stuff. But I just think it's asking something more than what Biden was asking in 2020 to get them to vote Democrat again. And I think that most of them are not going to do it this time, and that's why she's polling below Biden in a lot of these important swing states.
I'm thrilled by that point because it segues perfectly into the question I wanted to ask you, which was if you are, in terms of the politics of this now, not in terms of the substance, but just the politics of this filibuster thing. If you are one of the Nikki Haley Republicans that Kamala Harris is trying to reach out to, and you hear this, what are you thinking? Because, most people, just like Bill correctly said before, don't give a shit about filibusters. But you know who does? College-educated people who are into politics. Like the nerds. They're the guys who are into filibusters, right? They're the only people who are into filibusters. They happen to be the Nikki Haley voters, right? They're the ones, they are the exact people that, like the super nerds who are into politics and into policy and all this kind of stuff. They're the ones that she's trying to reach, these Nikki Haley types, right? These good government people types, right? What are they thinking when they're hearing this? Because until now, they've been looking for a reason to not vote for Trump, right? They've been thinking, okay, Kamala Harris, she's kind of like a not Trump. That's fine. She's not going to do anything. I mean, she doesn't even have any policies. She's not going to do anything. That's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll just get rid of Trump. But now she's hearing Kamala Harris say, no, we're going to get rid of the filibuster. And they're going, well, there's a chance that the Democrats will hold the Senate at least in the last 2 years of her term. Every single thing she promised, it might be a reality. If you get rid of the filibuster, it can happen. So now we're playing with live bullets. Now, if I'm choosing Kamala Harris, I'm choosing her wealth tax. I'm choosing all the shit which normally I just go, oh yeah, that's just her talking. But now I've got something else to think about. It's not just about not Trump. It's also about the other stuff she's promising, which I don't favor at all. So is this a problem that she is undermining her Never Trumper support base with this filibuster stuff?
Well, I think politically the calculation she's making is that the proportion of people who support something approximating the standard of Roe v. Wade is as high as any other play she's going to make. You know, it's like about 2/3 of voters thereabouts, and it includes many of those suburban women that they're trying aggressively to target, who are maybe traditionally voted Republican but have strayed Democratic more lately. And so, you know, I think that the proportion of people who care specifically about the filibuster, as we've said, would be exceedingly low and not a proportion that you'd worry about burning in favor of a really popular policy position. But I do think that the broader question of, you know, does it signal that she is going to be the, you know, crazy liberal that Donald Trump is painting her as? I think that's the issue, yeah. I also think that the people who are worried about that are probably going to be worried about that anyway. It doesn't just take, I don't think there's anything that's like exceptionally notable about this relative to anything else, really. You know, if it's taken for people to think that Harris would like to implement the things that she said she'd like to implement, that's a strange kind of mentality. So I think that it may well be the case that a lot of the Haley voters will ultimately, you know, at the ballot box think, I actually don't want to vote for this person and her progressive policies, but I don't think it will come down to the filibuster thing. I think that there are enough people making versions of the argument that she's too progressive anyway. And the solution to that, if you really care about stopping Trump and norms, but also are conservative, is to vote different down ballot.
Yep, fair enough. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add about this topic?
No, I'll get into this later on in another subject, yeah.
Okay, all right. Melina, anything else to add? No. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to, now that I've just said that, I don't want to just re-till the ground, the soil from Playing America. I'm going to now bring up a topic I talked about in Playing America, but I'm going to talk about in much, much greater depth. I talked about in Playing America, of course, because it's PEP. I'll get you guys involved as well. Okay. So I want to talk about a law that just passed, 3 laws, in fact, that just passed in California about deepfakes. Now, there is a lot of concern out there about AI. According to Pew, 82% of people are somewhat or extremely concerned about AI's influence on this election. And that's across the board. Republicans, 82% as well, right across the board. Having said that, the issue of AI deepfakes has just become extremely partisan. One of the few reasons that you might want to pay for Twitter usage is because you might be wondering, why would anyone pay for Twitter usage? One of the main reasons is, and not just writing essays like Dollar Bill does, whatever his name is, Bill Ackman, but also you get access to Twitter's AI engine, Grok, if you pay for Twitter. All right. And you might wonder, who cares about Grok? There are like 50 free AI engines out there in the community. Grok's different to the other AI engines. You know how it's different? It allows you to do likenesses of political figures. The other engines don't let you do that Because they're responsible. So all those memes you see on Twitter of Donald Trump, carrying geese and cats and all the rest of it, they're all made with grok, because you can't do that. You can't do a Trump meme with another AI engine, right? Now, the X users, they're loving it. They're loving these memes, right? These AI memes. And Elon Musk signal boosted an AI video a few weeks back. It wasn't, well, I suppose it is a deep fake. It just wasn't a deep fake video. It was a deep fake audio where they used an AI voice of Kamala Harris placed over one of the top of her real ads.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility at the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence.
Why would she say that?
Elon tweeted that clip out saying, "This is amazing," and a laughter emoji. I must say, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Melina can vouch for this. I always used to say on our TV shows that political satire is comedy that's not funny. And I feel like that backs it up. But anyway, someone who really didn't find it funny was Gavin Newsom. He referred to that video right there that Elon had just tweeted out and wrote, "Manipulating a voice in an ad like this one, should be illegal. I'll be signing a bill in a matter of weeks to make sure it is." Just a few weeks later, he signed 3 laws which he claims have done exactly that. He took a bit of a lap of honour about this on Twitter after he signed them. What do the bills do? All right, so first of all, first law takes effect immediately. It bans people from knowingly sharing deceptive political deepfakes around election time. So we're talking 120 days before an election, all the way through to 60 days after the election, just in case there's a recount, I guess. The second law goes into effect in January next year after the election, and it requires labels to appear on deceptive audio, video, or pictures in political ads, and especially when they're generated with the help from AI. The third one is going to go into effect in January next year as well. It will require social media platforms and other websites with more than 1 million users in California to label or remove AI deepfakes within 72 hours after they receive a complaint. If they fail to do that, you can get a court order against them. If you violate any of those laws, you're not going to jail, you get sued. They're civil laws, not criminal laws, right? Now, to be clear, none of this is particularly revolutionary. Every single one of these laws in some capacity exists in a number of other states. The labeling laws in particular are in a lot of states. The difference is this is California, so they have teeth. Like when Montana tells you not to do it, no one gives a shit. But when California tells you not to do it, these companies are based in California, so they can get you. All right, that's one reason I think people care more about this. I think another reason is because they hate Gavin Newsom, like the Twitter people I'm talking about, like who are very, very angry. The Twitter desperados, they're just gone nuts. Right, it's like Gavin Newsom took the Statue of Liberty's torch out of her hand and used it to just smash the head in of a bald eagle on the American flag while Lee Greenwood was standing by and just watching in horror. Right? It's that kind of situation, right? They're not happy. So first of all, let me just ask you guys, just off the top of your head, before I go into any more detail, do you have any instant reactions to these laws? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I have a couple. One, all these laws are pointless, right? Because it's, if you can't get it in California, you can get it from Malaysia or whatever. There'll be offshore things, and they can create as many people as they want looking for even if they tried to abide by the law, which they're not going to, it's impossible to deal with it. As an American and a journalist, I have a very wide idea of what you should be able to do. An obvious parody like that, you should definitely be able to do, particularly in the political realm. I think there's a strong case, like if it's something like, hi, I'm the owner of Hungry Jack's and I hate Hungry Jack's and I think you should go to McDonald's. I mean, you can make a case that's fraud of some sort, it's commercial fraud. But in the political realm, I just think you have to let these things happen. And I think Gavin Newsom is posturing, just like all the Twitter people are posturing. This is just all performative bullshit. And all that said, Elon Musk is a real threat to democracy and society. I mean, he really is. He's just going crazier and crazier. I think he's a really bad guy, and I don't understand. This is another pet hobby horse of mine. I understand why people are still on Twitter. I mean, I got off Twitter like 2 years ago. I can't imagine why people are saying, I'm a professional person, I'm going to give Elon Musk free content for his website, when basically it's just Truth Social with some non-crazy people on it. I understand why the non-crazy people are still there. All they have to do is leave, and the place will just turn into another Truth Social. So basically, I think it's all performative nonsense. And I think what everyone should do in Australia, first of all, and America definitely, is what you want to do is transparency. And to me, the issue is, and I mean, Elon Musk is totally free to generate fake Kamala Harris videos all day long. That's great. He's not technically, I don't know if he's an American, or is he an American citizen?
I think he is.
He is, yeah. So that's great. He can do it. He's allowed to do that, right? But at the same time, I think it's legitimate for the government to say, look, we believe in free speech. Anyone can do whatever they want on Twitter, as long as they're actually real people. And we want transparency and see what you're doing about Russian bots and all this other stuff. You need to let researchers in there to see what's going on behind the scenes. And we're going to demand transparency. And we're going to drown you with having to give us reports about what's happening, what you're doing. And that's the way to combat this, as opposed to these meaningless laws. And I don't think they'd withstand First Amendment scrutiny, actually. I mean, I think that any Supreme Court would say you're allowed to make a fake video of Kamala Harris saying ridiculous things. Like, that's life. It's not constitutional.
Let me add a bit more at this point, because I agree with you in one respect, that these laws aren't going to do much. I disagree with you, surprisingly, for some people, until they hear why. I disagree with you that this is going to be a First Amendment issue. And I'll tell you, but now I'll explain why as I give you more information. There are two key words in this law. Those words are materially deceptive. And let me explain what materially deceptive means in this law. Materially deceptive content means audio or visual media that is intentionally digitally created or modified, which includes but is not limited to deepfakes, such that the content would falsely appear to a reasonable person to be an authentic record of the content depicted in the media. So just back over the important point there. The content would falsely appear to a reasonable person to be an authentic record. No reasonable person would see that ad and think that was an authentic record. No one would watch that ad and go, oh, that's real. Kamala Harris is really saying that she's a deep state puppet. No one would do that. It's obviously a parody. It's obviously a joke, right? And so for that reason, Gavin Newsom's law does not contradict that ad, even though he says it does. When you actually look at the wording of his law, I don't think that's going to survive. In court, that would, if that went to court, Elon Musk would win that court case because the law doesn't cover that, and that's why I don't think it's going to fall foul of the First Amendment, because the only way you can bust someone with this law is if they create content that would falsely appear to a reasonable person to be an authentic record of the content, which is fraud, like you just said. It's defamation. It's fraud. Those laws exist. You don't need this law. This law does nothing that current law doesn't already do. You are not allowed to lie about someone. You don't have a First Amendment right to commit fraud, right? And if you pull off a convincing deepfake that will convince other people that Kamala Harris genuinely tears the heads off dogs, then that's the crime of the campaign, torturing dogs and killing dogs. Everyone's doing it these days. Then you've just committed fraud. There's a law for that already. The fact it's got AI or doesn't have AI in it doesn't matter. That's fraud. What are you saying, Bill?
Well, but I think the thing is you're allowed to lie about candidates. You're allowed to say, I heard Kamala Harris say that she was a DEI candidate.
Yes.
Okay. But my second thing is, so then they go to court and then you bring in a whole bunch of Facebook groups and it's like the Humboldt County voters for Trump. And they all say, oh my God, did you hear what Kamala Harris said the other day? Look, it was on Twitter and they share it. I knew she would say that. I heard that was true. I heard it was taped behind the scenes at the Fairmont Hotel. And you show like 4 days of all the 500 people on this Facebook group discussing how it's real and they know it's real, and then you do that times 20. I mean, isn't that evidence that reasonable people did see it? I mean, I'm just saying, because that's what will happen. And you're talking about a lot of really, really dumb people out there, frankly. And I don't know if I said this on the pod before, but maybe you probably haven't heard this, but my wife and I will never forget the first Trump-Clinton debate. We had all these relatives over. We're ecumenical. Come on over, see the debate. And one of my elderly aunts came in, plopped down on the couch, and said, I heard CNN isn't even broadcasting this. Right? Yeah. CNN's on the big TV. But they just say these crazy things, and there's no consciousness that it's absurd or that it's obviously wrong. So but on the other hand, Chaz, you could say, well, those aren't reasonable people. And maybe in court they could try to say, look, those are just delusional Republicans. They don't count.
Look, I think you're right that what we are discovering more and more on the internet is that what we once would have considered a reasonable person is rarer than we thought.
Yeah.
And that, there are a lot of dumb people out there. And maybe over time, the reasonable person test is going to be for stupider people.
Yeah.
Because increasingly it seems like there's a lot of stupid people out there. So, that may well be the case. But my point is that the issue is about deception. It's not about whether it's used by AI, whether it's AI that created it or impersonator. It's not like we don't have means of impersonating people already without AI.
Yeah.
I was going to say that specific video you could easily make just through editing, because you're not even, it's not like one of those really sophisticated deepfakes where they make it look like a video of the person saying it. It's voiceover, which you could do quite easily just by franken-grabbing edits from speeches.
Yeah, or just get an impersonator like we do on Planet America every single show. It's not hard to do that. Yeah. So for me, the question is, are you deceiving people or not? And if you're deceiving people, there's a law for that.
Yeah, but not in the political sense. That's the thing. I'm not a First Amendment lawyer, right? But I'm pretty sure you're allowed to just say whatever you want. The Supreme Court, like I said, if there's a specific commercial thing that you're ripping someone off with money or like wire fraud, but just saying that Kamala Harris did all that, that's not against the law. That's not defamatory.
You can say whatever you want. That's your First Amendment right.
Yeah.
But can you pretend to be someone else?
Yeah, as long as it's not for money, as long as it's to get a political point across.
Well,
I'm just thinking. I just think
because impersonators aren't being jailed for fraud.
No, I know. But
because they're deliberately parodic. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the next thing I would say is I got a few points to make about this. The labeling laws, they're not going to cut it, because labeling laws, like labels, get removed all the time on the internet. Things get repackaged, and you edit bits out. You zoom in, you zoom out. They get re-recorded by someone else and repackaged by someone else. Before you know it, a label that was there is no longer there. That's going to happen all the time. If you're relying on labeling laws, eventually a concerning clip is going to end up being divorced from its original labeling. So I don't think that works. But my main point, actually, because I actually have a solution for this, even though I just said what I just said about there are laws for this, I think there is a solution. And I came across this by accident. This might be very stupid because I haven't heard anyone else say this. So it may well be really, really dumb. But I was going to make a joke when I was thinking about this, about the fact that if you want to stop people being fooled by AI, what you should do is make people only post AI images of Kamala Harris, because no AI of Kamala Harris ever looks like Kamala Harris. I'm not sure you've seen much of this, but have a look at that. That's one example. Right there. That's supposedly Kamala Harris. That's supposedly Kamala Harris. That's supposedly Kamala Harris. Look at this video. It doesn't look anything like Kamala Harris. Wait till she gets pregnant. There you go. Look at that.
Oh, God.
You can't unsee that, Chaz.
How about that? So that woman at the end there just looks like a generic African. Like they don't look anything like Kamala Harris. I've never seen an AI Kamala Harris that looks like Kamala Harris, right? Now, I imagine the reason for that is because there aren't an awful lot of half Indian, half African American people out there for AI to learn from. And so it's really inaccurate. They're renditions of someone with that particular racial makeup. I don't know. I'm just guessing that. But for whatever reason, Kamala Harris always looks like a random Hispanic, always in AI, right? And so anyway, so I find that quite funny. It's one of my ongoing little peccadillos. I love looking up AI of Kamala Harris and laughing at how pathetic it is and how they need little name tags like bad cartoonists with Kamala written on it. But anyway, but then it got me thinking. I thought, this is actually the answer. This is the answer right here, which is rather than forcing labels and time limits and all these weird loopholes for AI to jump through, just have one rule, which is AI engines have to all offer an option for what they call celebrity mode. And celebrity mode is to give them the Kamala Harris treatment. That's 5% off. That you know who the celebrity is that they're taking off there, but it's not quite right. It's not quite right to the point where no one would ever believe as the actual celebrity. But you know, it's close enough that you go, okay, I get who they're talking about. And then you can go crazy. And the reason I say celebrity is because this isn't a problem just for politics. This is a problem for deepfake porn, for celebrities like making endorsements, is a problem for famous people generally, right? And if you introduce this celebrity thing, not just for politics, but everything, people have a choice of either using the celebrity mode or using the real one. Now, if they use celebrity mode, they've got complete protection. They can do whatever the hell they want. There's no compromise on their freedom of speech whatsoever at any point in time. If they go for the real one, well, then you're taking a risk. Yeah. Then it's like in law, there's a term called the eggshell skull principle, which is if you hit someone in the head and they happen to have an eggshell for a skull, and then you kill them, too bad, buddy, you're going to jail. Even if no reasonable person would have ever thought that you would break their head open. This is an eggshell skull situation, right? What you do is you say, okay, if you choose the real version and not celebrity mode, we are going to presume in court that you have an intent to mislead. And then it becomes malicious. And for those who know anything about libel laws in America, as soon as it becomes malicious, you're screwed. Right? The protections just disappear, and you're really easy to sue. There's no First Amendment protection when you're malicious. And so if you offer this celebrity mode, I think the law can do the job for you. All it requires just offering that mode. So that's my solution. What do you reckon?
I look forward to a future where we get to see people complaining that they're not being included in celebrity mode.
Of course they will.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
Will.
It's just a little bit odd because you want people to have the right to say what they want.
Yeah.
I think they could really get into trouble if you'd said something like, hi, my name's Kamala Harris. I support blankety blank. Send money. No. I support Mark Johnson for governor of North Carolina. Please send Mark Robinson. Yeah. Where if you're trying to get people to spend some money. But I really think you should have been a lawyer. That would have been an interesting contention. It's just hard to think. I think that line that you quoted from the law, I think what that is, that's a lie that they put in to try to make it seem like it's constitutionally protected. But we'll see. I mean, this strikes me as one of those performative things like Texas and Florida did against the social media companies. And like I said, they could just get the most healthy thing for society was just to say, we support your guys' free speech rights. Anyone should be able to tweet whatever they want on Twitter. However, we're going to force you as something like a public utility. We want transparency. We want to see all the complaints. And you guys have to let academic researchers in so that there's outside oversight so we know what you're doing. Because you don't have free speech to do that, to allow Russian trolls in, which I think is the really big problem, because Americans have the right to say as many stupid things as they want. But I think the government has a legitimate interest in saying, look, at Twitter, we want to see how you're handling these troll farms, which are very prevalent.
Yeah. One more point before we move on. I don't think that this is how misinformation works anyway. I don't think misinformation works. I mean, maybe it will in the future, but at least so far, I think the most effective way that people are misinformed today is still the old-fashioned way, by lying. And like an AP poll, for instance, found 67% of Republicans say they trust Donald Trump and his campaign for reliable information, which was more than any other source in the poll. Those people, they're getting misinformed. Like, it's just a fact. And on the internet, in particular, there's another way, which to me is much more of a concern than AI. There's no way you can stop it, though. You just can't stop it. There's no way the law can stop this. And that is decontextualization. It is a chronic problem on Twitter in particular. Taking a clip out of context, labeling it as something else, and then everyone believes it. Not just dumb people. Everyone believes it. I spent half my life tracking down these bloody clips that have been decontextualized, and I just know in my guts that that people are being misled, and it takes forever to find it, and everyone is misled. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. There was one just this week. It was involving Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy, because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
So that got sent around to a lot of people in conservative media. It was on a lot of articles. For instance, here's Michael Knowles on the Daily Wire talking about it.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is now looking into reining in the conservative media environment, because we have to do something about this scourge, this plague of conservatives speaking their mind on social media.
I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy. And so that's something that we're looking into.
So we're looking into that. We're looking into that, because you don't have a right to say stuff that I don't like. We got to do something. We got to rein you in, conservatives. Right now, conservatives have one social media platform, the smallest of them all, X.
Okay, and he went on to be very angry. A big-time conservative tweeter, Ian Miles Chong, tweeted that clip out with the caption, AOC, along with several other members of Congress, are looking into ways of reining in the media environment. She says that censorship is necessary so that you can't just spew disinformation. Who made her the arbiter of the truth? They're coming for X. Okay, the actual context? I don't know if you've guessed it. It was recorded on January 12th, 2021. It was about January 6th.
Oh, yeah.
That was the context, right? That's what she was talking about. When she was talking about misinformation, she wasn't talking about X. X didn't exist for another 12 months, right? What she was talking about, 18 months. What she was talking about was Fox News and Newsmax spreading bullshit about the election, which is not a freedom of speech issue. That's a libel issue, as we discovered when Fox News had $1 billion payout, right? So there's no First Amendment issues here. They Jody 451 on X doesn't need to worry about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez coming for her. She's not talking about that.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
But what happened was they took her out of context, put a different caption on. Everyone believed it. Everyone got upset about it. That is how people are misinformed today, more than anything. It happens all the time. And there is no way. There's no way to stop it. There is no way to legally go. I wish someone come with an idea on how you deal with it, because I'm fucked if I know. All I know is there's the bane of my existence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just want to throw that out there. If that's what we should worry about.
Yeah. And I think, and one thing really honestly, societies adapt to this. It used to be people talking over their backyard fences. Did you hear what Joe did? And obviously there's a lot of malicious people. Remember back in the day, there'd be the big, famous things of people getting lynched or something just because of whisper campaigns, getting out of control. Of course, during the 30s, the era of yellow journalism in America, you had stuff as bad or worse as we're seeing today. Society has a way of figuring it out at some point. I used to have this theory, I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast before, I used to have this theory about a dumb tax. And I thought that someone else must have come up with it, but I remember searching on the internet and no one did. And that over time, people who do believe dumb things over time are going to pay a price. And that at some point, and it really could be that we have a good realignment over this election, the next one, and people go back under their rocks and society moves on. I mean, you got to admit that could happen.
It could.
As a sidelight to this, one of the things I was looking up while you were talking is that, the hacking of the Trump campaign stuff.
Yes.
There was obviously this thing, the opposition research file on J.D. Vance that the Trump campaign commissioned, which, as you can imagine, is fun reading. So that, all these news organizations have declined to publish it. One blogger has published it. X immediately started throwing people off the platform, anyone who posted it. Okay, and that when people talk about it, they're seeing, you're not allowed to post that, and people getting knocked off the platform. So that's the way X is handling this. I mean, again, Musk is, he's supposed to be the free speach guy and stuff like that.
Free speech absolutist.
Yeah,
yes.
It's for me, but not for thee.
Yeah. Melina, I've got my eye on the clock for you, so why don't you talk to us? I can't wait to find out what this is about. Why don't you talk to us about gangster rap?
Okay, specifically, the use of rap in criminal trials. Okay. Quick precursor as to why. Last week on Planet America, I did a segment looking at Georgia's RICO laws, and which are being used to prosecute Trump, but also being used to prosecute the rapper Young Thug. And the general, I won't get into rehash all of that. You can watch it on Planet America if you're interested. But the general thrust of it was that Fani Willis is using RICO laws to suggest that this very famous rapper is not just a rapper with a record label, but that his record label is also a criminal gang. And part of the evidence that she's using in that case is lyrics from his songs, where he's, by her argument, talking about crimes that he committed, therefore confessing to crimes. And she literally said, and we used this clip in the show, if you admit your crimes over a beat, I'm going to use it. And so in the course of researching for that, I fell down this deep rabbit hole about the use of rap lyrics in criminal trials, because I was interested, is this unique? Is this the first time that this has happened, or is this something that's been going on in other contexts? And I didn't have time to get into that at all in the piece, but I found it very interesting. So this is the podcast for the things that we can't fit on Planet America.
It is.
So I wanted to talk about that specifically in the broader context and give a bit of background to what's going on. There's a great New York Times piece about this, which we can put in the homework, where a lot of this information comes from. But the piece is an essay that's talking about the work that's done by this group called Rap on Trial, which is a website that's been pulling together the work of journalists and law students to document the use of rap lyrics in criminal trials. And they've got a database now with nearly 700 cases. Just to give a little bit of a sense of how this is being used, there's a case study that was highlighted in that Times article that I think is just worth talking about. So you get a sense of how this works in practice, and then we can talk about the broader questions around this issue and the broader implications. So there was this guy called Tommy Kennedy who a few years ago, he's 15 years old, he'd been posting his amateur rap music on SoundCloud. And in the area that he lived in, there had been 3 recent shootings. One of the victims was a 19-year-old named Samar McLean. And the crime scene had no fingerprints or weapons or eyewitnesses. So police didn't have a lot of leads to try and solve this murder. And the victim's stepfather had heard one of Kennedy's songs on SoundCloud, and listening to the lyrics, he thought it mentioned Samar's name and referenced a detail that could have alluded to the murder. So he told police. Police did a raid on Kennedy's grandma's home where he lived, and he was arrested and charged with murder. He was offered a plea deal, but he refused. He said that he was innocent and he was not going to take the plea deal, so he went to court. In terms of the evidence for the case, a gun was found in Kennedy's home that matched the type of gun that they think was used in the crime, 38 caliber revolver, but they don't know if it's the same one. They just know it's the same type of gun, broadly speaking, but they don't have any forensic evidence that would suggest that this is definitely the exact gun. There were no witnesses or physical evidence that placed Kennedy at the crime scene. The victim's cousin saw the victim argue with someone on the day he was killed, and Kennedy was present at that fight, but not part of the argument directly. So they knew each other, they had friends in common, they hung out in the same area, but they weren't fighting directly, but Kennedy was present when a verbal fight took place. In terms of the song, police say that the song had a lyric that said "catch Sema slipping." He insisted that an isolated vocal track on his computer would prove he actually said "catch a morgue slipping," which is a slang reference to someone on the opposite side, which is a phrase he'd used in at least one other song before. So it was hard to hear. It's not a high quality track. And he said, if you go to my computer and you find that specific vocal track, it will be clearer and you'll hear that I'm not talking about that at all. They never did that in his original trial.
Wow.
Yeah. And some of the lyrics in the song were interpreted as referencing details of the crime, but other lyrics that were, quite specific did not match the facts of the crime. So, people picked and chose what, they were going to pay attention to and what they weren't going to pay attention to. The song was played multiple times in his trial as a key piece of evidence allegedly connecting him to the crime. So they have nothing physical connecting him to the crime. They argued the motive was to steal his gun, and they said that's how he ended up with the gun in his home. But we don't know if it was the same gun or not. Other than that, nothing connecting him specifically to this crime except for the rap song, which he says, if you actually got the proper evidence, would prove he wasn't even talking about that. And in 2017, just before he turned 18, he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years. So we're talking a really serious sentence for a teenager who was a child at the time of the murder, 15 years.
And what state was it again?
I believe it was Wisconsin.
Wow.
So that's just one example, outside of a high-profile case, which is increasingly a risk to be an issue because you have more and more people uploading amateur music to SoundCloud, YouTube, various platforms. And these are some of the ways that it's being used. So some of the broader questions with this issue, rap songs are sometimes used to argue that defendants are guilty when there's little other evidence linking them to the crime. That was obviously the case here. It's not the only time where that's happened. Whether any kind of evidence can be used in a trial is ultimately at the discretion of a judge. This really only happens with rap music. Rap is treated as more literal than other forms of creative expression. So we're not seeing other types of music or films or, no one's trying Martin Scorsese saying, well, you put this crime in Goodfellas, so you must have done it. Yeah. This is really a rap-specific issue. And there was an interesting study in 2016, an academic study. They showed two groups a set of lyrics, so the same set of lyrics. They told one group that they were rap lyrics and the other group that they were lyrics from a country song. And they found participants deemed identical lyrics more literal, offensive, and in greater need of regulation when they were characterized as rap compared with country music. So the disparity there is obviously very telling. And
I wonder what the racial component of that poll was.
Yeah. You're not supposed to use character evidence to give a general bad impression of someone to the jury. But again, ultimately, this comes down to individual judges to decide whether this is evidence that's relevant to the case or just something that's generally used to try and paint a bad picture of a person. And, the argument is that using rap lyrics in trials plays to racial stereotypes without having to say it explicitly. It just gives an impression of a certain kind of person that people might have opinions about. And generally, judges overwhelmingly rule in favor of treating rap lyrics literally when people want to present them. Prosecutors want to present them as evidence. So there is also an underlying assumption there that a predominantly black genre of music is less creative than other genres. People are inclined to treat it as literal in a way that they don't with other forms of creative expression. So let's ask the devil's advocate question. Is rap music more literal than other forms? Is it reasonable. And Bill, I'd really be interested to get you to weigh in here as the music expert in the room. I have my own opinions on it as well, but I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on it first.
Well, it's so interesting. I'd never heard about that story, and I could totally imagine it happening. And we have to remember that American states, just like Australian states, right? Wisconsin, we have, it's a liberal state, but boy, you go 30 kilometers outside any big town and you're in the deep South again, right? So you could totally see this happening. It's so funny because rap lyrics, of course, have been demonized from the very beginning. You know, the FBI was chasing bands around like NWA at the beginning. So I'm not surprised at all. It sounds also like the band doesn't have good counsel. The poor guy doesn't have good counsel because obviously if there's no actual evidence tying him to the crime, you should be able to establish reasonable doubt. And yeah, I mean, it's been going on. And of course, just to be honest, a lot of, P. Diddy right now, there's a lot of rappers who run around with guns and shoot them and do really, really bad things. On the other hand, of course, we know that white rock people have also done really bad things. But,
Yes, they have.
They haven't quite gotten to the level of some of these people.
Well,
but
they shot the sheriff.
They did, right? And this is what I was talking to Chaz about before. There's the famous Johnny Cash lyric, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And that's never been considered an issue. So I do have one related story about heavy metal, which is really interesting because this has come down certain times at heavy metal. Remember, that was, Satanism and all that stuff. And there was actually a very famous trial in the 90s based on Judas Priest, because there were these two kids who were really into Judas Priest, and they had a song like Dream Deceivers, I'm going to kill myself, I got da-da-da. So they're all sitting there, they go, yeah, we should kill ourselves. Okay, let's kill ourselves. So they get a rifle. One of them kills himself. The other blows his face off. Okay, so there's a great documentary about this. And then Judas Priest got put on trial for causing these two kids to try to commit successfully an attempt suicide. Okay, incredibly wonderful movie. I'm going to give away the ending. It's a really interesting movie because they interview the kid who blew his face off. So half the movie you have this guy talking, and it's very disturbing, but over time it creates his humanity again and stuff like that. Super interesting. And anyway, the climax of the case, they get his sister on the stand. And the lawyer says, do you listen to heavy metal music? And she goes, no. And he said, do you listen to Judas Priest? And she said, no. Have you ever listened to heavy metal? And she said, no. And he goes, well, why did you try to kill yourself then? And it turned out that the sister had tried to kill herself a couple years ago, I think with a gun. And so obviously that threw the case around that obviously this is a disturbed family. There was this woman who tried to commit suicide who didn't. So obviously that was good lawyering. That was my point of bringing it up. So it's very, very sad. I mean, it's just, the indignities fostered on the black population in America in the legal system is just ridiculous. And you'd think that there would be a better lawyer.
Yeah, he has tried to appeal, but there are limits in terms of the grounds that he can appeal. His case isn't fully resolved, but here's what I'd say about the broad argument that rap is more literal and therefore it deserves to be treated differently from other genres of creative expression. I mean, obviously, there's already inherently an issue with the fact that it is an African-American genre of music predominantly. So already, you got to look at it really seriously and question that assumption that it deserves to be treated differently. And I do think, the fact that it is the most popular genre in the US, you do have this very perverse situation where black artists are rewarded culturally and financially for rapping about gangs and crime and then thrown in jail for it because it's supposedly beyond the pale. But I think
that's such a great point.
Like, rap music, it's a convention of the genre to rap in first person. So that's sort of, it doesn't inherently mean that it's more autobiographical. That is just a genre convention. People tend to rap that way rather than in a more sort of third person way. And there is a premium placed on authenticity within the rap genre as well, specifically as well within the gangster rap subgenre. So many things in rap songs may well be based on true stories, but it doesn't mean that they aren't embellished or a mashup of different people and events, or rapping about something that happened in that environment but wasn't actually them. Just as one example, I mentioned Scorsese before, there's this great subtle detail in the opening of Goodfellas where you see these guys putting these boxes of yellow jumpers in the back of a truck. And it's like just a random little thing. And I remember seeing an interview with Scorsese once where he said, he grew up in an Italian-American community in a time where the mafia was very big. And he was a sickly kid. He had asthma. He was home a lot. And he recalled a time in his childhood seeing, people always putting things on and off the back of trucks in his environment. And there was a time where he saw that happening, specifically the yellow jumpers. And so that was like a little detail that he had observed in his life, being surrounded by people doing criminal things that he'd put into a creative work. It doesn't mean that he's a gangster, but he's reflecting the environment he grew up in and then embellishing it and making it something different. So there's every reason to give the benefit of the doubt that rappers are doing the same thing. And people who come from these environments, like inner city areas where there's a lot of crime and a lot of gang crime specifically, don't necessarily cut all of their ties to people who are involved in that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean that they are behaving in a criminal manner. Especially, I'm thinking more of a Young Thug case now, but once they're successful and rich and have no reason to commit crime. And it definitely doesn't mean that the things they're rapping about are confessions. And even art that's based on true stories explicitly take lots of liberties with the truth. I mean, you can just look at the $170 million lawsuit that Netflix is facing over Baby Reindeer, which is allegedly a true story, but as we found out once it got legaled, was not exactly fully a true story. So with any kind of creative work, people take license. It might be kind of real. It may be more autobiographical than other songs or artists, but that doesn't mean we should take every aspect of it literally, and certainly in the case of a criminal context. And I would say there's evidence that the use of rap in trials is increasing. The people who are tracking this, it actually seems to be happening more now than in the kind of initial panic in the early 90s when this became a popular genre in the first place. I said before, but it's increasingly a problem as more and more young people put music online, where they're even more likely to not get the benefit of the doubt and not have good lawyers, which I assume the Young Thugs of the world have, as in the musician. So you have a situation now where you have a lot of people growing up in areas with a lot of poverty and a lot of crime. They want to express themselves creatively. They want to have some hope of getting out of this poverty and crime. They look to famous rappers who are very successful and popular in mainstream culture. And they try to use that medium to describe the world that they live in as well. And then police use it as a confession to a murder and try to put them in jail. So, I mean, the bottom line for me is I think if you don't have enough evidence to convict someone without using song lyrics, you don't have enough evidence to convict them. So you should not need to use rap lyrics in criminal trials ever, in my opinion. Because if you don't have it without it, then you don't have it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I like treating a rap song like a confession when it's not sworn. It's like, as you say, it's a genre which may not be true. You have no idea. Like, it just seems bizarre to me.
Just because it's expressed in the first person doesn't mean that it's real. It's creative expression. It's art.
Well, I'll tell you where I agree with you completely on that. I'll tell you where I find this potentially interesting from a legal point of view I find these examples, I just can't believe them. Like, I can't believe they're real, which is why you brought them up. But where I think this gets more interesting and gets a bit more ambiguous, and you go, oh, okay, here we go, is, although I think the same rules apply, it's not rap, it's stand-up. Like, stand-up comedy is a form where, and that's where I thought you were going when you were talking about Baby Reindeer. I thought you were about to mention Hassan Minaj.
Oh, yeah.
Where stand-up, is something where you are very much pretending this actually happened.
Yeah.
Like, there's no ambiguity about this at all. In rap, there's no pretense that it actually happened, whereas in stand-up, there is 100% pretense that actually happened. Now, people who know a bit about comedy know that it almost never happens as they say it does. They're constantly gilding the lily and making up shit, and if not making up the entire story. But at least it's presented as if the audience think it's real. If the audience didn't think it was real, they wouldn't laugh. All right, so I know that for a fact that when you take away the audience's belief that they're listening to a real story, they just immediately just lose them. Bang, immediately. So that's part of the inverted commas art form. So that to me is, if someone did a stand-up about committing some kind of crime and then they got arrested for it, that would be an interesting legal case. Even though I still think the same principles should apply that you were just saying with rap. because it is still an art form and it's still not under oath and it's still. Yeah.
It's a good example because like there would be every chance that it would not be real.
Yeah.
And unless you can prove that it is, you should not be using stand-up in criminal trials either.
I agree.
People have, like, yes, it's an assumption of the audience that it's real, or at least in some way based on real. I would say that is also the case with gangster rap, that it's doesn't mean it is real, but I think there is a cultural presumption that it is authentic, or certainly the idea of authenticity is valued. So if you have someone who's grown up middle class and is rapping about, you know, being in gangs and killing people and whatever, like, then they're probably going to get ripped a bit for that, you know, which is why Drake, you know, if you had Drake trying to do gangster rap, people would hate him even more than they hate him already. Whereas people like, say, Young Thug grew up in a really violent part of Atlanta where there were gangs everywhere. He undoubtedly is friends with people who are in gangs, you know, so yes, you get people like Nipsey Hussle who were murdered in gang violence. You know, there is a real connection there, but that doesn't mean that what is expressed on the song is the literal truth.
Bill, you want to say something?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Chaz said about it too. I can think of one other great example. Lenny Bruce, in one of the extant Lenny Bruce tapes, there's a thing where he's talking with his wife or girlfriend or partner, and it gets escalated and escalated, and he finally does this routine where he uses the C word, and it's the whole point is he hits her, slugs her. Okay, it's like this big cathartic thing, and I was kind of thinking that, you know, I don't know about his. I have no reason to believe he was abusive or anything to his partner because, you know, he's probably just a comedian. But it would have been really interesting if he had. You can imagine a scenario where he had hit his girlfriend and then they could have used that. Like he did a routine about it. He used the C word, he hit me just like in his routine.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then he did it and then he went out and did a routine about it. I mean, either way, you could kind of see that. But that is just totally horrific. That's really, really, really bad. I bet, I'm trying to analyze it from the First Amendment perspective too, because I think that if a case like that ever got up, I think they'd say your creative work can't be used as evidence against you.
Why not?
Well, that's the thing that's interesting. You can't ban the gangster rap on First Amendment grounds.
Yeah.
So that's why you can publish it, but you can use it as evidence to say they committed a crime.
But I'm thinking that you could make a First Amendment argument, because it's one thing if I write a letter, hey, Chaz, I robbed that store yesterday. And then it's another thing, like I was out robbing the store. And I think there's I think you could make a First Amendment issue that you can't have your artistic expression used against you as evidence, absent some, you know, and behind the counter, I took 4 diamonds and a Snickers bar, and if 4 diamonds and a Snickers bar were gone, I mean, that would be evidence in a way, but that's different from your expression.
I reckon, I mean, look, I'm not a First Amendment lawyer. My personal view is that the First Amendment allows you the right to express your rap, but it doesn't stop anyone using it for whatever purposes they want to, including as a legal attack against you.
No, but honestly, that's my point. The point is, but that's not what the First Amendment is. The First Amendment is the government can't use what you say, can't punish you for what you say. And I'm just thinking you could make that argument that you know, absent some obvious connection, just because I talk about murdering people, you can't use that as evidence that I'm a bad person. I think there's an interesting First Amendment.
Maybe.
Because it is the government punishing you.
Someone would certainly make the argument, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else on that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill, time to step up. I know you've been very keen on this RFK story.
Oh, we're getting to Olivia Nuzzi.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. This is going to be really fun.
I told you Bill's been keen on this one.
Well, this has been really great so far. And I don't know to what extent people have been hearing about this, but it's a terrific story. And just to start out, there's this writer with New York Magazine who's an up-and-coming, young, hot reporter called Olivia Nuzzi, and there was this kerfluffle happening, I guess a week ago now, last Thursday. There were these rumors coming out, and then New York Magazine put out a statement saying that that this reporter had been suspended because of some sort of unspecified entanglement with a former something subject.
I got it for you here.
Yeah, I got it.
I just read it. You got it?
Yeah. And then it transpired it was RFK Jr.
Yeah.
Okay. And then she made some vague reference to a former subject. They kept using the word former. And then she said it wasn't physical. Okay. Now, as you can imagine, these two things just made the internet just explode for all these different reasons. Okay, and I'll get into some of the details, but I want to say two things about it. The first is it's so unfair. Okay, people are just going after this Olivia Nuzzi like you wouldn't believe. And this is one of my little pet subjects because in pop culture, specifically in movie and TV shows, anytime there's a reporter who's a woman, she sleeps with her source. There's just millions of examples. Absence of Malice, famous defamation movie, House of Cards. There's a Woody Allen movie, I think it's Scoop, where Charlotte...
Of course there's a Woody Allen movie.
Yeah. And women are always women reporters are always sexualized in some way, all the way back to the reporter movie of all reporter movies, All the President's Men, where Woodward and Bernstein don't sleep with anyone, but they need to get a hold of some guy, and they say, hey, Joanne, come over here. Didn't you used to go out with such and such? And she goes, yeah. And they basically, look, we need you to go over and seduce him and find out what happened. And she goes, oh, that's disgusting. And they said, run along, little girl. I mean, that just happens in the course of this movie, okay? Yeah. And it's incredibly unfair because, as you can imagine, female reporters, quite the contrary, are just subjected to extraordinary harassment and leering and this and that. You can imagine just in their day-to-day lives. And it's one of the things that's really, really terrible. Female reporters are always sexualized. It's really disgusting. Okay, first thing. Second thing, she so deserves everything she gets. Okay, you have no idea how bad this is. So what happened is, a year ago, she did this profile of RFK Jr. Yeah. Actually, let me back up a little bit. She is a very precocious person. Okay. She started out, she got her start. She was an intern at the campaign for Anthony Weiner. Remember Anthony Weiner?
Oh, yeah. I remember.
I'm not going to go into all this. But what happened is she worked there for a month or so, and then she basically started writing about this insider thing on the campaign for this little blog, and then it got picked up by the New York Daily News, and it was this huge kerfluffle. So basically, she started out volunteering for this political campaign, and I'm happy to hear what happened, but just for the record, she went and basically betrayed everyone there by turning around and writing about it, using that to get to the Daily News, and then ends up as a reporter with the Daily Beast and eventually finds her way to New York Magazine. Yeah. She's a very bright, precocious young person, does a lot of reporting. She's got hustle. She's also overwritten. She's an overwriter. She's kind of labored. And I only know... I don't follow her particularly, but she's always been someone who's on people's radar because she does manage to put herself into it. I guess I should say I write for New York Magazine, but I have nothing to do with the political side of this at all. Sure. And particularly, I don't know the new editor or anything. I'm going to get to that in a second. But there also has been this thing about her the whole time. You probably don't know who Keith Olbermann is.
Oh, I know who Keith Olbermann is.
He was a very liberal, he was a famous sports guy, and then he became a liberal TV commentator.
He was the king of MSNBC
for several years. Yeah. And he was a pretty funny guy. He's very, very good, but he's also a crank, and he's kind of crazy.
Definitely
so he starts coming out saying, well, I lived with Olivia for 3 years, and I can tell you some things about her. And over the last 10 years, every once in a while, he goes, oh, Olivia, you're so intellectually dishonest. This isn't true. Oh, you're a monster. He's actually tweeted at very awful things about her over the years. And it turns out she was 20. He was like 54.
Yeah. He's got a bit of a track record, Keith Olbermann.
Exactly. Oh, my God. Ann Coulter.
Yeah, I was going to say Ann Coulter.
One of the other things that's great about this story, I should say, as we move into it, is that it's also one of those stories, and Olivia Newton-Z seems to be one of those people who does things, and it's just like these neutron bombs or exploding things that just get everyone around. Almost like a video game where something explodes and the next thing explodes, the next thing explodes. So, as I said, social media went crazy. Every media reporter in D.C. and New York went crazy. And so what we find out is that she did this profile of him a year ago. They started some sort of a thing. Pictures were exchanged. Okay. And basically they were cybersexing, basically, is what happens. So then what happened?
That's not RFK's version.
Right. No, I'm going to get to that.
Get to that.
Okay, but then RFK came back and saying, no, she was stalking him. Yeah. That she was doing it. He kept blocking her number, but then he'd unblock her, and she was chasing him with porn.
Chasing him with porn.
Chasing him with porn. And then, here's the thing. If you read their contention carefully, at one point it said, ultimately, he found it hard to resist. Okay, now the one thing I think we can say is that Olivia Nuzzi was practicing safe sex during this period, which is very advisable to do, I think, when it comes to RFK Jr.
Yes.
Okay. Let's remember that RFK Jr., of course, is married to Cheryl Hines, right? He's a famous horn dog.
Yeah. Very, very famous horn dog.
Very famous horn dog. Let's also remember that Olivia Nuzzi, until very recently, was engaged. Okay? She was engaged to Ryan Lizza.
Yes.
Ryan Lizza is a famous reporter for Politico. Okay? I have to say, because this is one of these stories that keeps exploding and bringing in all this dirty laundry of all these people, we have to take note that Ryan Lizza used to be a famous reporter at The New Yorker until he got bounced out about 5 years ago on Me Too charges.
Yes.
Okay? There was a big story in the Times about it. It seems not to be a trivial thing. That's all I'm going to say about that. He moves to Politico. Speaking as a media person, he broke up with her a month ago. They ended their engagement. Okay, you have to kind of suspect that it had something to do with the fact that she was sexting with RFK Jr. He found out about it. That wasn't clear for a while until yesterday, when I think in a Vanity Fair story, he acknowledged that that's why they broke up. Okay. So now you have Ryan Lizza, who's a famous reporter for Politico, sitting on this explosive personal story a month. Like he knew there was this thing going on and he didn't report it.
Isn't it?
I'm just saying.
You're a journalist. You tell me. That's fair enough.
I'm just saying. This is what I'm saying, though. It's exposing all these moral quandaries. Sure, Meanwhile, in New York Magazine put this statement out about it. And like I said, it was very mealy-mouthed that she's taking a break and because of some involvement with a former – they kept using someone who is a former subject of the campaign. What does that mean? Yeah. And then she said, it was a former subject of an article, when the word former in both of those cases is completely weird. And which doesn't make either of them look good because, they should be much more frank about what happened. Then there was a new Vanity Fair story backgrounding all of this. And I guess New York Magazine had been in a tizzy for 2 days, and they've been having all these crazy meetings. And for a while, they had mooted the idea that maybe she would just take a medical leave for a while. Okay? And just to be clear, there's a very, very clear ethical thing here. And what you say is you're no longer covering the presidential campaign for it. Oh, also, she apparently lied for the first go-around. She just denied it, finally came clean.
Oh, so she was...
her boss.
They put it to her and she said no. Right.
Yeah, this is according to fairly reputable media coverage on this. So, but they, this isn't a difficult issue. Like all they have to do is say, Olivia Nuzzi, because of some things we're not going to talk about, is being taken off the campaign. We're not going to comment on it. Then let the world go. But that's just what you have to do. And they didn't do that originally. And when they did talk about it, they did it in a very mealy-mouthed way. I really encourage people to take a look at some of the stories about it. It's very, very delicious.
Can you send them to me and I'll put them in the homework?
Oh, so absolutely,
can read them, yeah.
And as I said, RFK is married as well. So all these different people have been weighing in on it, and they have been saying outrageous things. Like Ben Smith, who used to be the New York Times media person, has this new outfit called Semaphore, and he did this very droll piece on this. And he said something like, some British journalists naturally have been texting us to ask what the fuss is about. If you're not sleeping with someone in a position of power, how are you even a journalist? And that brings me back to my original point, which is that men sleep with people on campaigns and all sorts of things all the time, and it's almost never, ever called out. And the one other thing I want to mention is my friend Jack Schaefer did a big story about this because there was a scandal kind of related about 10 or 12 years ago. And he quoted a Washington Post column from 1977, Richard Cohen, who was a very famous columnist way back then. Male reporters have been having affairs with women they cover for as long as there have been reporters, women, and spare time, he wrote. Suffice it to say, though, that some affairs have been conducted at fairly high levels, and suffice it to say, too, that no man has been chastised by his fellows for this kind of activity. Okay? That's a very, very fair comment. On the other hand, they need to be transparent about it on something quite so high profile, because all those things going on, people weren't sleeping with Maggie Thatcher, or people like that. It's pretty outrageous. And then secondly, it is kind of funny because Olivia Nuzzi is from this sort of, there's these new generations of journalists who just did not come up through the standard world and get inculcated in all this stuff. She's always played fast and loose. She's very quote unquote online. People attack her for a bunch of stuff she posted about Barack Obama. And they're saying, oh, they were anti-Obama, they were racist. And they're really not. They're just super reverse, double ironic internet bullshit memes things, right?
Sure.
So she's in that kind of world, and she doesn't really play by the same rules ever have. But in closing, she got herself into a real pickle. Her career is destroyed. Her reputation, she's always going to be the woman who did these disgusting things with RFK Jr., who was like 42 years her senior and nobody even wants to think about. And, she's obviously embarrassed her and her fiance and Cheryl Hines and her newspaper. But there's a lot of fun stuff out there.
There is. Do you want to say something, Melina?
I'd like to know if you guys have anything to say about it. Ooh, I know what the word you're looking for is ooh.
No, I think the thing there's two things I noticed about the reaction from other journalists. One is that you certainly get the impression that her and Ryan Lizza are both not very well liked by a lot of people in certainly some snark in the articles. But also it struck me that there was a real kind of moralizing around it. And it's interesting what you say about the double standard. And also, look, I'm not a journalist, so, I'm not trained in the rules of journalism and, if there are particular kind of red lines, but just like a general observation about media reporting and stories from the perspective I do have is that, I work in TV and I often notice anytime there's a story in the media that covers something related to TV that I know about, it's like that I know about directly. I always find it very interesting because it's always really obvious. Either sometimes you can tell literally who the source is, or if not, you can certainly know exactly what their agenda is. And it's interesting when you know a lot of background information to see the way that influences the reporting that happens. And that, really like journalism is very often a product of who the journalist is talking to and what that relationship is like. And obviously better journalists will talk to lots of people and get lots of perspectives and balance that in their reporting. And that's the difference between good journalists and bad journalists who will just lazily cultivate a source and just put forward whatever their agenda is. So, and look, there's like a lot of the kind of reporting on the sort of things that I know about are not that high level, like major US political reporting. So, very different. But that is all just to say that the relationship between journalists and sources is very important. And it's obviously how journalists get information, but it also, I think, significantly impacts the nature of news. So I think it is really valid and important to question those relationships. I do wonder with some of the people in the press who are moralizing about the fact that it's sexting, how much they interrogate some of their own relationships that maybe are not sexual, but, potentially do influence their reporting in ways that maybe they should interrogate more.
Yeah.
Because I think, I can see why anything sexual is a red line, but also I think something doesn't have to be sexual to compromise you as a reporter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I kind of, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a journalist. I understand that sourcing is important, but I do wonder how much certain journalists have a tendency to get too chummy with the kind of people they're supposed to be holding accountable and how that influences the quality of reporting. So that's kind of without sort of getting into all the specifics of this case, that's kind of my broad thought on the kind of ethical issues that this kind of sparked in me.
I think that's a really good call. I was just going to say, in terms of like the ethical aspect of it, for those who are wondering, well, hang on, she never reported on RFK again. Why is this a big deal? I think that there's one article in particular I'm thinking about, which people have mentioned. I'm not saying I invented this, but she quite famously wrote an article in, I think it was May, about Joe Biden, about the conspiracy to hide Joe Biden's senility, essentially. And that was at the time it came out, probably the most controversial article of its kind on that topic. Like I think that was before the Wall Street Journal did their piece, which was of the same oeuvre. It was the first really big one.
But it was after the debate, right?
No, this
It was
is
before
well
the debate.
before the
Okay,
debate.
I meant to look that up. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is well before the debate. And she was suggesting that she knew about this way back when, and it was an open secret. And I think it was about May. Could you look it up? I think it was about May.
Yeah, 4 July.
For July. Oh, okay. So it was after the debate. So I'm an idiot. Okay, that's fine. Thank you for checking me. Thank you for fact checking me. Right. But it actually just goes to my point even more, actually. So I'm glad that you did fact check that, which is, as soon as that comes out now, in hindsight, everyone looks back at that article and goes, okay, you are quoting things that happened last year in that article. Why was it written on the 4th of July? All right. Was it written on the 4th of July because you're sexting with RFK and it's in RFK's interests for Joe Biden to stay in the race, so you didn't want to rock the boat at that point in time until after the debate? Is that why they didn't come out to the 4th of July? Or did it not come out to the 4th of July because you were trying to because you're sexting with RFK and it was in his interest for you're sitting there trying to work out why it is in RFK's interest for the timing of that article to come out then. Should it come out earlier? Should it come out later? Etc. And the fact we're having these thoughts is a proof of the conflict of interest. And so that is the problem. The problem is not RFK reportage. The problem is all reportage on the federal election involves RFK in some respect. So that's the first thing. The second thing, this excuse from RFK that he was chased by porn, and that essentially that he tried to block her, but then she would email him and said she had some important information for him, and so then he unblocked her, and then she'd send him a nude, and then he'd block her again, and then she'd email again. She just wouldn't take no for an answer. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but not by much. Yeah. It's like this whole excuse is just, I don't know what's true out of whether it was mutual, as Olivia Nuzzi's camp suggests, or whether she pursued him, as RFK's camp suggests. It doesn't actually matter. Like, it doesn't really matter because, number one, he's a grown man who makes his own choices. He's a real grown man. That's the first thing. And saying, I couldn't resist the porn. I mean, come on. I mean, is Olivia Nuzzi the only person dealing porn in the world these days? I'm pretty sure there are other places to get porn. Right? And if you think someone's a bit crazy, which is what the tenor of his defense is, and then they send you a nude, that's not, oh, cool, you've punctured my defenses. Here's the proof that you're crazy, right? That's just like, I'm never going to talk to you again. Like, and for him to suggest that over 8 months as a process of just this cycle repeating over and over again with more and more nudes and just wearing him down, that just makes no sense whatsoever. And, I don't know what's true, but I know that leaving this aside, RFK has shown a real tendency to not accept responsibility for anything in his political career.
It's almost like he's an entitled rich.
Yeah, that's right. It's always someone else's fault. He's always the victim. I'm about to go through another one where he's the victim with a North Carolina ballot. And no matter how much he screws up, it's always a conspiracy and someone else is at fault. And if only they would just let him just do his one thing, he would succeed. And he's just a screw up. He really is. And this is just completely in keeping with it. And while I don't believe for a second his story, I have no evidence for that except for every other thing that he does and every other excuse that he makes. And so that's kind of my take.
Yeah. And the one final thing I should just mention, that the other thing is that it's just, it's transparency. It'd be totally cool if she said, I'm a hotshot reporter, I'm friends with RFK Jr., wink, wink. Move on, and you can settle that. Kennedy, who I've become good friends with since my profile of him last year, said da 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 da. Like, you can totally do that. I mean, and she obviously didn't do that. That's all I have to say about it.
The only other thing I'd add is that we haven't mentioned Cheryl Hines yet, who is a liberal, and who was sat by RFK's disastrous independent campaign for a year and just shut up. And I'm sure she didn't enjoy it at all. And I'm sure she really didn't enjoy him joining Team Trump. And I'm sure all her friends have been giving her probably ex-friends have been giving her hell about it. And for him to reward her standing by him all this time with that is pretty shitty.
Add to that, it was her birthday last weekend, which is a weird thing to know, but I looked her up once and it's the same day as my mum. So happy birthday to my mum. But yeah, it just makes it that little bit worse.
Yeah, it's pretty shitty. And like, I mean, I feel guilty even mentioning this, but just I think it's irrelevant information. When I'm doing this, when I'm saying this about Cheryl Hines, I should point out that when there's reasonable evidence to believe that she was one of his mistresses with his last wife.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I don't mean to get into that. Yeah.
So she probably knew what she was getting into. But nevertheless, it's still really shitty. And so
that reminds me of one thing I always say about Mia Farrow is how, when Mia Farrow discovered that Woody Allen had nude pictures of her adopted daughter, Soon-Yi, on his mantelpiece, she was very, very surprised, about as surprised as Andre Previn's wife was when Andre Previn came home one day and said that Mia Farrow was having twins. His twins.
Melina, I know you got to go. Do you have anything else you want to say quickly before you go? About anything, any topic whatsoever?
No, I have to go.
Okay. All right.
But it's been fun.
Thanks, Melina.
Thanks, Melina.
You.
See you next time.
Stay peppy, Melina. I'm going to continue with RFK. Like I teased, I have a little bit more to say about him. And that is that I'm not so good on the gossip. I'm a lot better on the legal cases. And RFK's just had one right now about being on the North Carolina ballot. RFK, for those who aren't keeping track, he's still on the ballot in Michigan. He's still on the ballot in Wisconsin. He's challenging both of them in court. But I want to talk about North Carolina, where there's been a bit of a problem because the Supreme Court recently ruled he was to be taken off the ballot, and it has some consequences. In particular, the Supreme Court in North Carolina, they're Republican dominated. They have ruled for Candy, and they have said that North Carolina need to start again with their ballots. What does that mean? That means that there are 2,348 different ballot styles statewide. They all have to be redesigned. They all have to be, well, the old ones have to be junked because they've already been printed. They have to be junked, and then new ballots need to be redesigned, reformatted, reproofed, reprinted, and then sent out. And then the voting machines need to be recoded in 100 different counties as well. So there's quite a lot of work to be done. In fact, most of it has been done because this story is a few weeks old. Let me take you through the facts quickly. The deadline for dropping off the ballot was August the 22nd. RFK Jr. suspended his campaign and endorsed Trump on August 23rd. So he missed the deadline. Too bad, hey? Well, no, because the North Carolina Supreme Court said, quote, the elections process should ensure that the voters are presented with accurate information regarding the candidates running for an elected office. Where a ballot contains misleading information or inaccurately lists the candidates, it risks interfering with the right to vote, according to one's conscience. We acknowledge that expediting the process of printing new ballots will require considerable time and effort by our election officials and significant expense to the state. But that is a price the North Carolina Constitution expects us to incur to protect voters' fundamental rights to vote their conscience and have that vote count. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's a bit pretty high-flown rhetoric, but cool, I get the point. Okay, no worries. What's the problem with that? Well, this means they have to destroy the 3 million ballots they've already printed. It means they have to redesign those ballots, I already said. The problem is this. The North Carolina State Elections Director testified in court that redesigning those ballots would take 18 to 23 days. Here's the problem. There's another law that says election officials have to mail out ballots to service members and others living overseas by September 6. Because of this court case, they ended up going out on September 20, a week ago. So they were 2 weeks past the legal stipulated date because of this ruling. And there was another law as well that said early voting has to begin on September 6. Still hasn't begun yet. So they're 3 weeks behind on that one. There was another federal law which ordered states to send absentee ballots overseas by September 21. That was in danger of being broken. They said it was going to be broken, but they just got there in the end. Like I said, September 20 they got there. So they didn't break federal law. But they didn't know they weren't going to break federal law. They predicted they were going to break it. And all this work and cost fell on the badly underfunded and under-resourced county boards of elections, right? Even though under state law, it says the Board of Elections may refuse a late request to remove a candidate from the ballot when removal is no longer practical. This was obviously no longer practical. So what's the court doing? Is the court crazy? Are they just conservative hacks? Is that what's going on here? Well, let me take you through their logic. The court said that to a large extent, any harm suffered by defendants in light of the Court of Appeals order is of their own making. What are we talking about there? Because the court notes that State Election Board Executive Director Karen Brinson Bell admitted that she knew on Friday, August 23, one day after the deadline, that RFK intended to remove his name from the ballots. She knew right then and there. And what did she do? Nothing. A member of RFK's campaign emailed the state board on Friday, August 23, asking how they can take his name off the ballot. They didn't respond. Rather than following up about it, Bell just told the county boards of elections to print the ballots. Continue preparing the ballots and just print them as they are. Over that weekend, they started. By the end of the weekend, on Monday, August the 26th, RFK's campaign had formally contacted State Board about withdrawing his name. They didn't stop printing the ballots. They received his formal request on Tuesday, August 27th. They didn't stop the ballots. They told him to get the We the People party to send in a formal request instead. He was on the We the People ballot line. They received We the People's request on the next day, Wednesday, August 28th, and they scheduled an emergency meeting for the board. Didn't stop printing the ballots. The next day, they had their meeting on Thursday, August 29, and they voted 3-2 to not remove RFK's name because they said it wouldn't be practical in the light of the current state of ballot production, which entirely happened after they had been told that he wanted to take his name off the ballot.
But just to be clear, I remember reading about this, but technically, did she find out after the ostensible deadline or
yes,
not?
She found out the day after the deadline.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So they could have held that meeting, that emergency meeting, on the Saturday, the day after RFK pulled out, if they wanted to, before the ballots had started to be printed. They chose not to. Remember what state law says. It says they may, not must, they may refuse a late request to remove a candidate from the ballot when removal is no longer practical. When removal is no longer practical. Was it still practical the day after the deadline? I'll leave that up to you to judge. They chose to wait until it was definitely no longer practical before even considering the request. So that's why the court said, thus, despite being on notice of plaintiff's intention to withdraw his name from the ballot for nearly a week, the state board directed the county boards to continue ballot production, including over the weekend, rather than communicating and cooperating forthrightly with plaintiff and the We the People party. We declined to grant defendants extraordinary relief when they are responsible for their own predicament. Now, we should say that the Electoral Board told the court that even if these officials had begun removing Kennedy's name the moment he suspended his campaign, the day after the deadline, they could not have met the legal deadline for sending out military ballots by September 6. So the court's ruling was that they should have taken it on their own to break state law. What do you reckon? What's Judge Bill saying?
Yeah, I remember hearing about this, and you did a great job going down the thing. It just seems to me the Supreme Court is just totally wrong because if it had gone the other way, then the other side could be yelling, you had this rule, you broke it. And I found this. I voted for the first time in Australian elections the other day, which was really fun for me. But I did everything I was supposed to do after I got my citizenship, and of course I go there and I'm not on the rolls.
Yeah.
And not only that, they said, "Oh, you have to bring your citizenship certificate." Like even though I become a citizen and I done what I'm supposed to, which is immediately enroll. I wasn't in there, and I had to drive all the way home and then stand in line again, blah, 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 blah. And then I asked why, and they go, oh, we print the ballots like on August 5th.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of going, you really don't have to print them, whatever. So, but I do take these are very, very complicated jurisdictions. Every jurisdiction has a complicated ballot, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm very sympathetic to elections people. North Carolina is a conservative state. It's not like, they're dealing with Hawaii or the District of Columbia where they're out to get people. And I just think all those people are underpaid, underfunded. They just follow the rules. I just think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
and it's going to inconvenience a lot of people.
Yeah, I got to say, I don't like that the state board knew what they were dealing with when RFK dropped out, and they elected to create a situation where it would be untenable for them to have to do any extra work. But I have a certain sympathy for them as well for exactly the reason you just said. These people aren't the best of the best. Like a lot of them are volunteers. Like it's like these people, they're pretty amateur, and to expect them to jump through pretty difficult hoops. It is because it is a difficult hoop to go through this process.
Oh, and the other thing is they're dealing with Democrats and they're dealing with Republicans. And then they start hearing, they kind of probably know who RFK Jr. is, et cetera. But the real people, there's all these kind of fly-by-night places. They don't know what to do. They're sending emails at weird hours. They don't know what the thing is. And it's totally appropriate to just roll your eyes and say, look at you guys. You're not playing in the big time. This is the problem when you're not organized. So, yeah.
Well, I was going to say another element for me, which people haven't talked much about, is I think the people who are most at fault here, like I think it's actually a tough call, to be honest. I think I think it's a judgment call, and I'm happy with your judgment call. I'm actually happy with the court's judgment call. I think it's a judgment call either way. I see the arguments on both sides here, but what I feel is real black and white is the deadline's wrong, because according to the electoral board, if RFK pulled out on the right day, like on the exact day, and which was one day earlier, and immediately put his form out, they probably weren't going to meet the deadline anyway. Because if they weren't going to meet the deadline one day after, they're probably not going to meet the deadline on the day.
Right.
The deadline is too late.
Right, but they would have discovered something. They would have said, "Look, we had this deadline. They met it. It sucks. We're not going to be able to do it. We're going to have to go back to the legislature and push it forward 3 weeks or something."
But that's what I'm saying.
They would have learned something.
Well, yeah. I'm saying like the deadline's been set on the wrong day, and if the deadline had been set the right day, say it's a week earlier or something like that, then RFK would have been a week late at the time he pulled out, or he would have pulled out on the right around the right period, and we wouldn't have had this problem.
Right.
Bill, you wanted to talk about World Liberty Financial. Do you still want to talk about that?
Do you know what? Can we talk about voting instead?
Yeah, let's
Is
talk
that
about
okay?
instead. That's fine. It's fine.
TLDR, TLDR?
Yeah.
Too long didn't read?
Yeah.
It's a scam. World Liberty Financial.
I'm
TLDR,
shocked.
It's a scam.
I'm shocked. Like when Truth Social just dies in the ass, they suddenly have a new investment for you. That's a scam as well? I never would have guessed. Okay, all right. Let's talk about
Barron
voters.
Trump. I want to make a quick point. Barron Trump, is the DeFi visionary. Did you hear that?
I've heard
That's
this,
his official title.
Yes.
So he's about to see a world of hurt because, there's hands off of presidential kids, right? So no one makes fun of him. It's right that no one did. He just went off to college. Now all of a sudden he's becoming the DeFi visionary of this highly public scam that is scam. Like the next few years of his life are not going to be unpleasant because now he's opened himself up to public ridicule, and frankly, he deserves it.
I figure...
I got to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Do you know how Barron got involved?
How did Barron get involved?
Martin Shkreli.
Oh, my God.
Remember him, the farmer bro who went to prison?
Yes.
So he hooked up with Barron. They're the ones who had the idea of the Bitcoin thing. And then apparently Shkreli says that, Barron doesn't like Don Jr. and he wanted to get on this early. So this is how tawdry and sad the whole thing is. And I just, for the record, I just want to say Barron's going to start getting ridiculed, and he deserves it.
Well, you have made that point. All I'd say about Barron, I'm not going to say anything about World Liberty Financial, but all I'd say about Barron is that he's past the age of 18, so he's open anyway, and he's one of the favourites of the Twitter world, like Twitter conservative world. They love Barron so much. So one of two things are about to happen. Either Trump is going to lose the election and then it doesn't matter and we'll just move on and someone else will have their time in the barrel, or Trump's going to win the election and there's 4 more years. And if there's 4 more years, there's going to be a lot of Barron time on Twitter. Yeah. So he's copping it regardless.
Yeah, Barron time. Okay, all I wanted to do is there's all these stories in the paper now about what really matters in the voters. And there was a big piece, I think, in the Times, it was Ronald Brownstein, Richard?
Ron Brownstein.
Ron Brownstein.
He's the Atlantic.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he had a big complex story about the real voters that matter are the people who say they want to vote Democratic, and they need to get out to the polls, and vice versa with the Republicans, et cetera, which is all fine. But basically, that's like all getting. I mean, I thought it was an okay story, but still, it just comes down to you got to get your people out to the polls,
sure.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So, and I've been interested in this other thing. This may or may not have any actual meaning. Okay, but I just think this. When I keep thinking like, what matters? Okay, I have this theory. Okay, first of all, as you know, most Americans don't vote, or a lot of Americans don't vote. But however, recently there has been huge voting spikes, and it was a very, very high turnout, the highest we've seen in a very long time last election. And when you go back and analyze over the past 20 or 30 years, spikes in voting helps Democrats. There was a big spike that elected Bill Clinton, big spike that elected Obama, big spike that elected Biden. Okay.
Although there is a question mark about whether that's going to continue.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then, and actually, just for the record, there was actually a very odd spike under the second George Bush campaign. And I think what it was is a lot of people were angered. A lot of people on the left were angered at him and wanted to vote against him. But, he had Karl Rove. Those guys were very smart, and they got their people out. Particularly they won Ohio. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Another interesting thing is that over the past 40 or 50 years, midterm spikes have been matched by general election spikes. Okay, so they basically track each other. So that, interestingly, midterm elections were actually down last year. They actually dropped from the previous one.
From the 2018.
Yeah.
But 2018 was a massive midterm.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, I'm just saying that's a bad data point. Yeah. But however, I think it's something like 60, almost 70% of America voted in 2020, which is extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
Okay. Couple little factoids I want to ask you real quickly.
Sure.
Okay. So what happens occasionally is there are these spikes and sometimes they drop. So from 2000 to 2004, okay, which is the second George Bush campaign, which I remember very well, unaccountably 17 million more people voted.
Okay.
From 2000.
Yep.
Okay. 2008, which is Obama, up only 9 million. But still, when you think about the previous one, that's a lot. That's like a total of 26 million more votes over those 2 cycles. Okay, so that really put it up. In 2012, the second Obama, down 2 million.
Yep.
Okay, that was Obama-Romney. It didn't really motivate people.
This is all making sense so far.
2016, up 7 million.
Yep.
Okay, and you could say that was a very interesting election because Trump was bringing out new people, a lot of people motivated to help Hillary Clinton out, vote against Trump and stuff like that. Not quite enough in a few battleground states.
Yep.
Okay? Up 7 million.
Yeah.
Here's my question to you, Chaz. What happened in 2020 from 2016?
It went up.
How much?
It went up a lot.
Any idea? Any guess?
Okay, if I'm guessing raw numbers, I would say I'd be guessing, this is a complete guess, I would say 15 million more.
That's really interesting. 22 million.
Wow.
I mean, that did not register with me before. That is just, and of course, Trump is always going around saying more people voted for me than any other sitting president. The joke is, but 13 or 7 million more people voted against you. And as I said before, the actual percentage is just extraordinary.
I hope I'm not giving anything away here, but you know the reason for that is not just because of Trump. It's because of mail-in voting.
Oh, yeah.
That's the COVID election, right?
Oh, exactly.
And so mail-in voting, when mail-in voting is everywhere and anyone can do it, more people vote. Yeah. No, there was that sort of thing. And that's what I was going to get to, that this little data point that the last midterm election actually went down a bit might be indicative that the general is going to drop down too. Yeah, I bet it is.
Okay. Now, again, you can also make the other argument that there's a lot of people motivated to vote against Trump again. I mean, all those people who voted last time, you got to figure they're going to come out this time.
Yeah, but
I could be wrong.
But less mail-in voting.
Yeah. No, I could be wrong.
I think that's all it's going to be. Less mail-in voting will be less voters.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
And all I wanted to point out that when, obviously there's all these, we all know how skeevy the polls are, which is all really true, but it really comes down to the fact that there's a margin of error.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
you know, that this thing that she's 2 points ahead, 2 points down, they're tied, whatever, it all means they're in this kind of realm somewhere, and we really can't know. And what really, really throws things off are all these new voters, because you have all these different patterns. You have industrial states where the population, of course, grows, but at a very modest rate. You have the traditional, what we call the Sun Belt states in America, the South, all the way over to Arizona, which, you know, typically have an enormous population shift from the North and East, and recently have been having a huge population shift from the West, namely California, okay, particularly to Arizona. And so I just want to mention a few things. So
can I say something very quickly before you mention that? Just out of nowhere, because you mentioned California's population shift. I saw just in a random article, I should have done a stats nugget on this, California's population has grown for the first time in a number of years. The new data just came out.
And it's going up again.
Yeah, it's going up again. Because it was a bit of a thing that California's population for quite a few years in a row was starting to drop. But it started to go up again. So I don't know why that is. I have no explanation. But just so you know, that's been a talking point. That Florida's population is going up and California's is going down. Well, I don't know about Florida's, but California's is going up again.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
And it could be a hangover from the pandemic still. And I just know anecdotally from talking to people in Arizona that's just flooded in with California.
Yeah, sure.
Which I think is going to have a huge effect. I really honestly do, because Californians are completely different, almost species from Arizonans. And Californians come to, and I just know this from being away for so long, you come back to Arizona, you look around and go, what are you people doing here? You know what I mean? It's not the state where Californians are going to come and say, oh, yeah, I'm into the Arizona lifestyle. They're going to say you people are crazy. Yeah. Okay? And so all those people who came in from California are Democratic voters. And they look at Arizona people, as I did, and just go, I can't believe the level of debate here. Okay. But just a few things. It's just kind of interesting. Michigan, I won't go into all the things, but basically 16 to 20, almost 400,000 new people voted for Trump, 520 for Clinton. Okay. That's a lot more. Florida, however, 1 million more people voted for Trump 4 years later. Only 800,000 voted for the Democrats. Okay. Arizona is super interesting, okay? Trump got 400,000 more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016, but the Democrats got 510, okay? Now, why is that so significant? Because Arizona, these were, in 2016, Trump got 1.2 million votes, Clinton got 1.1 million votes. So these explosions, 400,000, just enormous. And we just don't know how those people are going to vote. Yeah. Because particularly in any of these states, in Georgia, Arizona, Texas, you have this huge influx of minorities. You have the minority population growing. However, sometimes they don't come out and vote properly. On the other hand, you just hit these tipping points. You have influx from California. You have all this crazy stuff going on. We don't know. And it's all different. The way these things hit Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania is different from Georgia, which is a southern state, and then, of course, Arizona, to some extent Nevada as well, okay? And Pennsylvania, for example, had similar increases, 400,000 and 500,000 votes, okay? Trump, Republican, Democrat, respectively. However, you're talking about a state population that's almost 3 times as big.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just something I think just doesn't get talked about enough about, that you're going to have these disproportionately, potentially, we don't know. I mean, it could be, as you say, they go down, and the midterm data kind of suggest that. On the other hand, even if it does kind of mean, hey, we're going to have this new normal close to 70%, it goes down to 65, that's still going to be among the highest of the modern era, right? And higher turnout tends to favor Democrats. However, in this election, it doesn't matter really of the votes. It's only going to matter in those 4 or 5 swing states. So it makes it even more complicated because you have some states that are growing it a little bit, others that could be spiking again.
Yeah. I got a few things to say. The first of which is just on the high voter turnout tends to favor Democrats, that we've seen. I mean, this was more under Biden and under Kamala Harris, but we've seen this year Trump dominate low propensity voters, and low propensity voters are the guys who turn out in a spike. So if there is a big spike, it might favor Trump. You know, it's because they're the low propensity voters, the people who aren't following politics, don't give a shit, don't follow the newspapers, aren't into the game. They're just people who follow social media or YouTube or whatever and just decide to turn up. They're the Trump supporters. So it's possible. I'm not saying it'll happen, but it's possible that a spike could help Trump.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That could definitely happen. And I also have a twist on that, though. Yeah. And that, and this comes into the issue of is there going to be a softening of Kamala Harris's support just based on racial issues since she's black and a woman? On the other hand, we've had such a huge realignment in American politics that a lot of the racist jerks who happen to still be Democrats have kind of moved over to full-on Republicans now. And a lot of Republicans who are never comfortable with the sexism and the racism of the party have kind of broken away. So I actually think the effects of that are going to be less. And one of the interesting things, though, is that just as someone who knows, I'm not a student of American history, but just going back to the Civil War archetype, there is this sort of, I don't want to use the word noble because they're not noble, but the hapless loser, in America. Okay, that's the South. They stood up for what they thought was a noble cause. They were on the wrong side of history. They were stupid about it, and they eventually got bulldozed. And God love them. I mean, 70 years later, they're still suffering it. And another kind of theory I have is that that's what we're going to see again, that this is all going to pass. And unfortunately, those people are going to be by the side of the road again. And so the question is, he got them out 2016. He got some out 2020. Are there more out there? Will those people, can they do it the third time? I don't know, because they are that kind of a voter. Yeah. And then there's one other issue that I thought Harris has to worry about, which is that, just that it is a circus. Yes. The other whole thing is that he is a circus, and that kind of gets people out in a weird way. She's a pretty serious person, and that's why they're playing up the joy thing, is having fun. But for some reason, this is something I put in my Sydney Morning Herald column out that drives me crazy, is that, Hillary Clinton was the most optimistic and positive candidate we'd had since Reagan. And Donald Trump was this crazy guy raining down fire and brimstone and, talking about American carnage. And in the American archetype, she would have easily won, and she didn't. So there's always on the other side, on the Republican side, I don't want to say hypocrisy, but it's, they use that when it's, when it's something that supports Reagan, that's good. When it doesn't, then it doesn't matter. So I kind of wonder if the joy thing is going to work or not. Obviously both sides have to work hard to get their people out. Oh, I know. I was going to say she has a lot of money, so that's going to help her out a lot.
She has an awful lot of money. What I was going to say is that I just want to pick up on that point of yours that you made about we don't know who these people are, these new voters, if they exist. And if they do exist, who they are. I want to develop that slightly about why that's such an important point. All our information comes from polls, right? And polls run likely voter models. And the data that they get from their polls might not reflect at all the final number that you see in the poll in the newspaper. Because the poll in the newspaper is looking at the percentages of Harris and Trump supporters from who are likely voters. And and they have their own definitions of what makes a likely voter. You might think, oh, that's easy. Ask them if they're going to vote. Interesting you say that. Brian Schaffner, co-director of the Cooperative Election Study, compared poll responses from 2020 to voter records from that year. Because while you don't know who these people voted for, you know if they voted. You actually know. And they found that 27% of people who said they would definitely vote in the election did not vote in the election. 27% who said they would definitely, not even likely, definitely vote. So when they're trying to work out these likely voter models to decide whether they count you in the polls, they're not looking at that. They're not looking at whether you said you were going to vote. They're looking at this article, by the way, I'm quoting from, is from the New York Times. I'll put that in the homework. You can have a look for yourself. It's an interesting article about likely voter models. They create a profile of a likely voter through a few methods. Number one, employing demographic information. If they're younger, they're less likely than if they're older. It's just a fact. Sorry, kids. They ask respondents if they've voted before, and they inquire as well, not if they're going to vote, but if they voted before. And they inquire as to the location of the polling place. They ask you if you know where the polling places you're going to vote in. And that's a tell. That's a tell. That's a tell. And in fact, they might not even ask you if you voted before. They might just look at your voter record and see if you voted before. But the point is, that's how they determine if you're a likely voter. So it's critically important. Did you vote before? If you're a new voter or a voter who lapsed and then came back, you ain't going to get polled. All right? So all those polls you see in New York Times Siena, if there's 500,000 more Arizonans, not one of them is going to end up in the poll. Not one of them. So we have no idea how they'll vote. And there's no way we can know that until Election Day. And so that is a source of great surprise on Election Day, how the new voters are going to vote, because they're not turning up in polls. So that's why I think it's such a critical point that you made there that people just don't get. And if you're interested, it's in our article. Do you have about 10 more minutes?
Yes, I do. And I'm just trying to think if I had one more thing to say. Oh,
yeah.
And so it's just interesting because it is this whole other new level. And I think all the people who write about polls, they kind of know all this. But when you look at it, and when you, again, I just was interested in Arizona because I lived there. But the idea that 37% more people voted in 1 year, which is pretty, and it had to do with mail-in voting and stuff like that. And there's actually a bunch of hassles there when it comes to voting too. And then you think about, the motivations on the different side. It's just a very, very difficult thing there's a lot of moving parts.
We don't have a 3-hour limit anymore, but I'm not going to suddenly start making 12-hour podcasts. This is not going to happen, right? So I can go over a little bit, but I'm not going to go over too much. Now, I haven't even started any policy time stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got a lot. I got a lot of policy. I know you think there's no policy in this election. I've got plenty of policy time. I'm going to push it one more podcast. Next podcast, I'm definitely doing policy time. And if we have to do a 4-hour podcast to get in the policy time, we're going to, because there's no more 3-hour limit. But all I'm going to do is just do this one little bit, which is not policy time, which is going to take about 10 minutes.
Okay, so what are we talking about?
What we're going to talk about is crime stats.
Ooh.
Because this is a classic PEP topic. Kamala Harris uses FBI crime figures. Donald Trump says her figures are wrong and uses completely different figures. Now, you might have thought, until now, you might assume, Donald Trump's figures are bullshit. No, they're not. They're different figures. There are two different kinds of figures. I'm not saying Donald Trump never bullshits about crime, but some of the stats he cites, which sound made up, aren't made up. I'm going to go through them for you. So let's start with the FBI figures, which are the ones which you'd be most familiar with. They're the standard figures when people cite crime figures. The FBI use a reporting system called the summary reporting system, but that only gathered limited data from limited crimes. So it was a kind of crappy system. So then they changed it in 2021 to a better, more detailed system called the National Incident-Based Reporting System. The NIBRS, it's not new. It started in 1988, but only became compulsory in 2021. The move to switch systems actually had nothing to do with Biden. You see 2021, you might think, oh, Biden screwed it all up. No, the decision was made in 2015, and Trump's DOJ could have cancelled the switch anytime they wanted to, but they didn't. In fact, Biden didn't even implement it. Trump implemented it in the first month of 2021. Okay, so it was actually an entirely nothing to do with Biden's situation, even though everyone's now blaming Biden for it, but had nothing to do with him. Why did it take so long to change systems? The reason is because there are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the country, and some of them are like the Dukes of Hazzard, okay? They're really small, they're backward, they've got no technology, they've got dudes with big white cowboy hats, they got that cute little dog going, the bloodhound. It took ages to cajole all these agencies to switch their reporting systems. In fact, even when it became compulsory in 2021, a whole bunch of them still didn't do it. So in 2021, heaps of agencies just didn't report data at all, which was a bit of a problem. Normally, 5 or 6% of agencies fail to report data. In 2021, a third of the agencies failed to report data, right? So that was a big problem. Now, the FBI, they tried to massage the data and make some assumptions to account for the lack of reporting, but the 2021 stats are generally considered by stats guys to be dubious, because there was too much manipulation, too many assumptions. The more assumptions you make, the dodgier the stats are. And so it was just a bit dodgy. If you look at proper stats, a proper graph of crime, they usually have 2021 to 2022 shaded out. That's the reason why, because it's just too hard. Yeah, Trump is only too happy to point that out. Elon Musk as well has been beating this drum relentlessly with tweets like this one here, where he says, "You are being lied to." And then he quotes some Twitter dude going on about how all the stats are dodgy from the FBI, right? Thing is, by 2022, the problem was actually solved because many more agencies came on board. So why is Elon Musk in that tweet there saying, quoting someone saying, at least 6,000 law enforcement agencies aren't providing data in 2022, meaning that 25% of the country's crime data is not captured by the FBI? Well, that's because the FBI releases their info in stages. And in one of the preliminary reports they released, the Marshall Project, it was a journalism, it's a publication about crime. They reported that 6,000 agencies hadn't reported. But by the time the final stats came out, that was no longer the case, because the FBI said if you missed reporting on the new system for 2022 and just for 2022, you're allowed to report under the old system. So they end up having only a 5%, 6% a failure to report rate, which is the same as they always had before. So the 2022 stats are great. No problems with them, right? And the final 2023 figures, even better. They just came out last week, which is why I've brought this up. Now that the whole talking point about, agencies aren't reporting is complete bullshit. The 2023 numbers are based on 94.3% of the US population. Okay, so it's back to normal. What do they say? They say violent crime fell by 3% nationwide. They say there's 11.6% drop in murder. Here's a graph of murder. You can see, since it's a great graph, you can see that 2021 is grayed out because it's a dodgy area. Rape's down 9.4%. Smaller, the aggravated assault is down 2.8%. Robbery down 0.3%. The FBI is also reporting an overall 2.4% drop in property crime, although it says car thefts were up by 12.6%. Okay, those are the FBI standard figures. They're the ones that Kamala Harris quotes. They're the ones that everyone quotes. Then we've got the Trump system, the National Crime Victimization Survey. These are collated by the Department of Justice. It's a big survey. 240,000 people each year, okay? Big survey. But what it is a violence victimization study. You're asking people, have you been a victim? Rather than the FBI numbers, which are asking the cops what crimes have been reported, this is asking people, have you been a victim? So it's coming at from the other end. So it's a different way to collate stats, right? These figures are all, I'm about to give you, are all per 1,000 people aged 12 or older, okay? 2018, What I'm citing here is the violent victimization stats, which are sexual assault, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, simple assault. Okay, so per 1,000 people aged 12 or older, 2018, it was 24 per 1,000 people. 2019, it was 21 per 1,000 people. 2020, it was 16 per 1,000 people. During COVID, obviously. No one's outside, you can't be a victim of a crime. 2021, 16.5 per thousand people. 2022, 23.5 per 1,000 people, bouncing back. 2023, 22.5 per 1,000 people. So to recap, because I've been told I go through stats too fast, so I'm recapping here.
Right.
2018 and 2019 were 24 and 21, so in the early 20s. And the last 2 years went back to those levels from 2018 and 2019. They were 23.5 and 22.5. So basically the same between Trump's second and third years and Biden's second and third years. The 2 middle years were the same. The COVID years, they were right down. Okay? That makes sense. But Trump can use that 2020 figure of 16, and then he can say, compared to 2020, violent crime is up nearly 40%. Rape is up 42%. Aggravated assaults are up 55%. Violent crime with a weapon is up 56%. Violent attacks on strangers are up 61%. Car theft is up 42%. And the most serious forms of violent crime are up 55%. Our cities are under siege. And this does not include the migrant crime and migrant rape spree that's overtaken our cities in recent months. Kamala crime is destroying America and gangs are taking over. Obviously, that was a Trump truth I just read out. All those numbers were right. They were correct. It's just the system is using, interacting with COVID and just being dodgy, cherry picking 2020 to 2023. When if you cherry pick 2019 to 2023, they're the same. Right? So that's what's going on there, right? And that's Trump's favorite system. Now, by those figures, crime is dropping just slightly, but it's largely the same as under pre-COVID Trump. Like I said, much more than under COVID. Of course, COVID unemployment figures don't count.
Right.
COVID debt figures, they don't count. COVID GDP figures, they don't count. But COVID crime figures, they count. They count as far as Trump's concerned. They really count. Except for the murder figures, because there was a big murder spike during COVID. That doesn't count. But the COVID violent crime, except for murder figures, that's what counts from COVID. So it's all very dodgy. It's all very cherry picky. It's all very bad faith. But leaving bad faith aside, what's better between the two systems? Because no one ever discusses this. Which is the better? I mean, because these are two legitimate systems. Which one's better? Well, they're different. The FBI stats, as I said, report crime to the police. The NCVS is a survey of victims. So they're measuring different things. In theory, the survey should reach more people because it doesn't rely on people reporting to the police. Some people are scared of the police. Some people just don't want any trouble, whatever. The survey covers those people. Right? Because they don't mind saying I've been a victim of a crime if they're not saying who did it.
Because people get mugged and they just figure, he took my wallet, I'm just going to go home.
Exactly. According to, so in theory it should reach more people. And according to the NCVS, less than half the crimes out there are reported. Obviously, only the FBI stats include murder because you can't self-report murder.
Yeah.
You're somewhat busy after you've been murdered. You can't report yourself. So so only the FBI stats work for murder. Also, this is a really fuzzy thing with the NCVS. It doesn't specify the exact year a crime occurred because it asks about the last 6 months of your life. So at the beginning of the year, if you're surveyed at the beginning of the year, you're being asked about the 6 months from the previous year.
Right.
So each period actually goes for 18 months, which is a bit fuzzy because then you're looking at figures that are supposedly from a year, but you're asking people for over an 18-month period for the figures of that year. So it's a bit weird like that.
Right.
Also using people's memory about what the last 6 months means. Who remembers what the last 6 months, like if you got mugged 4 months ago or 8 months ago, are you going to remember whether it's within the 6 months or not? Like it's just really fuzzy, right? Also, how much have we heard from Trump about how you can't trust public opinion polls? This is one big public opinion poll. That's what this is, right? And also, why would Trump not trust the FBI figures? Because he says they're biased, but then he trusts a DOJ survey when the Department of Justice, well, the FBI is part of the Department of Justice. So that makes no sense as well. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on here. Having said all that, over a decent amount of time, statisticians say the two major systems reflect the same trends. But from year to year, they can vary quite a lot.
Okay, cool. Because that is a very interesting dichotomy. And then the one little observation I bring is that crime enforcement in America has gotten more and more severe. You know, there's a lot more police around. You know, the whole criminalization and the force of the police, and has all these other deleterious effects. And so it's kind of interesting, though, the difference between crimes that are reported versus crimes that happen. Yeah. And so that kind of that. I would kind of think that the dichotomy between the two would be much more narrow than it was 20 years ago because there's so much more aggressive police enforcement.
It's about 46% reportage of crimes, generally speaking. Now, some crimes are more reported than others.
Right.
But on average, it's about 46%.
Right. And then the one thing, because again, this is my little hobby horse, people should just remember that the rate of crime in America in most big cities, et cetera, is so much lower than it was. And that so, when they were talking, LA crime went up like 12% last year, it's like, yeah, but it had gone down by 70% in the last 6 or 8 years. So that kind of a distinction isn't that big anymore. And then I forget if I said this the other time, that the other thing that doesn't get talked about is that crime has gone down so much in the big cities that the most crime-ridden, I don't want to say crime-ridden, but the highest crime places in America now are red states, right? Oklahoma, North Dakota, Louisiana, places like that. They have much higher crime rates than New York City does.
That is definitely the case in New York City. But I was just going to say, I feel uncomfortable talking about states and crime because, like you always say, the cities and the rural areas are so different. And the cities in those red states, like St. Louis and stuff, like St. Louis, the crime rate in St. Louis is a lot different than the crime rate outside St. Louis.
No, but it's also very high in rural areas, and part of the reason is that you have a particular brand of crime in urban cities, but when that goes down, you still have the traditional crime, which of course is men murdering women, right? I mean, that's the thing that always stays, and that rate of that is much higher in red states, and of course, all those red state people are always talking about how awful the cities are, and they don't like to talk about how the obvious and multivariate other social ills that are so endemic to the South.
Do you have any thoughts about the different systems, or you just?
No, I mean it's interesting. Yeah, no, the whole thing about polling people, because a lot of people do experience robberies and stuff like this, and they just let it go.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I personally prefer the FBI stats because I like comparing apples with apples, even though the actual numbers are undoubtedly incorrect because of the lack of reportage and people are leaving out lots of reports. The trends feel real to me because you're comparing apples with apples all the time, whereas there's just something ambiguous about a survey and there's fuzzy about it. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel more comfortable with FBI stats myself personally, but
and it's become so politicized, the whole crime rate thing.
It has. You make up your own mind. As long as you know what the systems are actually mean, then you make up your own mind. From a year-to-year basis, they can be quite different. Like 2022, the FBI reported an overall 2% decline in violent crime, but the NCVS indicated a 75% increase. After COVID, obviously.
Right.
But that even after COVID, that seems kind of unlikely to me. So I'm just a bit nervous about that survey. But anyway, one more thing. These are not the only two means of reporting crime. There's one other way, which is cities and states put out their numbers publicly all the time. And someone, my favorite interviewee, Jeff Asher, I love Jeff Asher from Datalytics. He's just the best crime guy. We talk to him a lot on Planet America. He has just gone around assembling every single public release of data on crime. And now you have to wait 18 months for the final figures from the FBI. He puts them out every month. And you can just see last month's murder figures. I'll show you. Here we are. That's his graph right there. So that's going right up to halfway through 2024, as you can see. And you can make that violent crimes as well, which you can see is pretty much a flat line.
That's so interesting because, that's, of course, the way that famously then the cities that did the super high concentration on crime figure analysis, they would do that real time thing. Oh, we're getting a lot of crime in this one area. We need to go suppress it there.
Well, this is what he does. And if you have a look at the states there and the cities, he actually you can look up by the city if you want. He's got all the data right there. So I'll put that in the homework as well. So you can become a massive crime nerd as well. Anyway, we've done enough. Bill, thank you so much for the first plus 3 hour podcast.
Oh, it was great. It was a really good one. And it was really great to have 3 people here too.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I like the tripods. We're going to do more of them.
It's going to be an exciting few weeks.
It is. Hang on in there. I'm not sure I'm
going
to get through. I'll do my best. Bill, thank you very much as always.
Jazz, thank you.
And till the other side of the white flash, maybe or maybe not. I'll see how I feel tonight. Stay peppy.